Phoenix Nights. Chapter 1007. After a series of marriage rejections and disappearances, Prince Arthur once again became a well-known man of the hour, in addition to his Grand Master identity. Soon, the latest news about this man of the hour came. Prince Arthur, who had been missing for a long time, finally appeared in Jinyao territory. This time Arthur escaped from a mysterious force with the help of the Church of Light, and was escorted back to Jinyao territory. For this, the Emperor of Dragon Brilliance, Rex, publicly expressed his gratitude to the Church of Light. According to Arthur, this experience was an unforgettable nightmare for him. The guardians who accompanied him, including his beloved woman, all died in this nightmare. In addition to the representatives of the surrounding kingdoms who came to express their condolences, the Ryo Empire also sent a permanent ambassador to the Longhuang Empire to express their condolences to Prince Arthur. After a long time, Prince Arthur, who had returned to normal after a long time, once again made a statement to publicly apologize to the Ryo Empire's Princess Rambus, who had been publicly rejected. He also gave half of the production line of the Magic Game Helmet to Rambus free of charge as compensation. The Magic Game Helmet was a special standard product designated by the Church of Light. If it was not the genuine product, it could not be connected to that kind of game illusion, nor could it be charged regularly to buy game time. It could be said that this was a monopoly industry. Now, Arthur actually gave away half of the production line for free, which was equivalent to directly handing over a big source of wealth to the hands of Princess Rambus. This transfer had been approved by the Church of Light. Regardless of feelings and only interest, it was indeed a good compensation for the biggest victim, Princess Rambus. For the Ryo Empire, who had always wanted an explanation from Arthur, it was also equivalent to a suitable explanation. In fact, no one would have thought that this was not a compensation or explanation, but the terms of the original deal between the engaged couple. As soon as the compensation was announced, the original story of Prince Arthur's love triangle became more and more popular, and many versions were derived. The biggest beneficiary was naturally Rambus. Not only did she win the sympathy of the people after vowing never to marry, she also expressed her position to many forces and received more support. The biggest victim was the second prince of the Ryo Empire, Victor. Originally, Rambus had achieved a great reversal in this farce of rejecting the marriage. With the addition of this source of wealth, of course, it was like adding wings to a tiger. The second prince also had a partner from the Dragon Bright Empire, Garfield. He had occupied the territory for many years and had always regarded the rich Golden Glory territory as his exclusive property. He had originally occupied the rich Jinyao territory for many years and had always regarded the rich Jinyao territory as his exclusive land. Unexpectedly, Arthur reappeared after disappearing for 7 years and immediately took back the big fat piece of meat. Moreover, he even instigated his subordinate, Samuel, to seriously injure him. It was not that Garfield did not play any tricks, but those tricks had now become a laughingstock. He could only watch the rapid expansion of the Jinyao territory in the hands of Arthur. The more prosperous the Jinyao territory was, the louder the slap on Garfield's face was. When he heard that Arthur had gone missing after rejecting the marriage in the Ryo Empire, and that his life was unknown, Garfield was ecstatic. He immediately asked Rex the Great to manage the Jinyao territory on his behalf. Not only Garfield, but even Luke was also active. The two of them secretly played many games, but unfortunately, they were all rejected by Rex the Great. In the most recent request, Rex the Great's tone had already loosened. After all, it was impossible for a territory to be without a ruler for a long time, especially a large territory like the Jinyao territory. Garfield wanted to work harder and take over the Jinyao territory before Luke. He did not expect that Arthur would actually appear again at this time. Moreover, he actually gave a part of the interests of the Jinyao territory to the woman from the Ryo Empire. For Garfield, who regarded the Jinyao territory as his own, it was like cutting off a piece of his flesh. However, no matter how painful it was for Garfield, the appearance of Arthur marked that his previous efforts were in vain. In this regard, Garfield hated it to the core, but he was helpless. Arthur was not only a prince but also a world-renowned mechanic master. He also had an extremely close relationship with the church. His glory far surpassed Garfield and Luke. Even if there was a marriage rejection, he was still the most popular candidate to inherit the throne. It was not something that Garfield could shake at the moment. Soon, Garfield received good news. Rex the Great was very dissatisfied with Arthur, who, privately, gave half of the magic helmet production line to Princess Rambus without his permission. Although the Jinyao territory was Arthur's territory, it was also a part of the Long Huang Empire. The interests of the Jinyao territory were also the interests of the Long Huang Empire. Arthur's behavior was equivalent to selling the interests of the country to another country because of personal factors. This nature was quite serious. According to the convention, whether it was the magic game or the yellow dragon wine, they belonged to the private property of Lord Arthur. What's more, these two were fought and developed by Arthur himself. The key factor was that the benefits were too shocking and coveted. For this reason, Rex the Great summoned Arthur to Yerodisha and reprimanded him. He ordered him to take back the decision, but Arthur refused. The transfer of the production line had been publicly announced to the world, and it was also recognized by the Church of Light. If he went back on his word and took it back, he would be humiliated. For Rambus, Arthur did feel guilty, so he insisted on compensating her. The consequence of this insistence was that the relationship between Rex the Great and Arthur became tense. Later, Rex the Great sent the Iron Scale to garrison the territory, under the name of protecting the safety of the third prince and avoiding a repeat of the kidnapping in the Ryo Empire. Arthur regained control of the Golden Glory estate. Although it promoted the rapid economic development, the military force in the estate had always been a weakness due to the short period of time. There was only the only armed force headed by Samuel, and it was a temporary patchwork of members. It could maintain law and order and deter thieves, but in terms of group warfare, it was definitely no match for the regular army. This time, the leader of the Iron Scales garrison in Jinyao territory was Trinidad, the deputy commander of the army, who was also the trusted subordinate of the second prince, Garfield. Rex's intention was quite obvious. Then, a series of decrees from Rex the Great vaguely implied sanctions against the Jinyao territory, including imposing special high taxes and restricting the trade of merchants. Many people had seen the signs. The father and son, who had reunited after being separated for 7 years, or more precisely, the honeymoon period, between the emperor and the prince had passed, and the relationship between the two would enter a subtle and sensitive stage. In the royal family, it was not unusual for father and son to fight each other for power and position. The majesty of Rex the Great and the absolute rule of the empire were well known, and the ability that Prince Arthur showed was so dazzling that it even surpassed his father's. Therefore, it was reasonable that Rex the Great was wary of him. Garfield took the opportunity to suggest that magic games and yellow dragon wine were currently popular in the world and were definitely the most important resources of the Long Huang Empire. In order to prevent similar incidents of giving production lines from happening again, Arthur should hand over the magic games and yellow dragon wine to the Empire. This suggestion made Rex the Great's heart palpitate. When he summoned Arthur, several times he had expressed his intention in this regard, either overtly or implicitly. However, these two sources of wealth were all developed by Arthur. Even if it were someone else, they would not hand them over easily, not to mention that Arthur had his biggest supporter, the Church of Light, behind him. The so-called monarchical power was given by God. The king needed the name of God to consolidate his rule and strengthen his power. However, water could carry a boat, but it could also capsize it. The divine power that was above the monarchical power made the kings feel scared all the time. On the surface, the monarchical power and the divine power were harmonious, but in fact, there was always an unresolvable contradiction. The relationship between the Temple of Light and other empires and kingdoms was the same, especially the two holy empires. Whether it was Rex the Great or Emperor Covalanti, they both regarded the Church of Light as the biggest threat and were trying to curb the influence of the Church of Light on their countries. Similarly, the Church of Light also wanted to support a completely more obedient king to take the throne, so that the faith of light and the control of the Church could easily penetrate into every corner of the country. As expected, after Arthur was in trouble, the Church of Light, which had a close relationship with him, immediately sent Cardinal Glallan to visit the Jianyao territory, claiming that they would further strengthen the economic cooperation with the Jianyao territory. Along with Glallan, the Knights Templar also visited. Their purpose was to accept Arthur's invitation to train the soldiers in the territory, improve their combat ability and guard ability, and avoid a repeat of the kidnapping incident in the Ryo Empire. This reason turned out to be a surprising coincidence when Rex sent his legion to enter the Jianyao territory. The attitude of the Church of Light shocked the whole Long Huang Empire. Such an obvious action seemed to be the intention of the Church to support Arthur to become the next king. While Garfield was jealous and worried, he was also a little happy because he knew his father's character very well. The closer Arthur was to the Church, the farther away he was from Rex the Great. Just when Prince Arthur and Rex the Great were in a rigid state, another unexpected news spread quickly. The yellow dragon wine and magic game produced in the Jianyao territory were actually from the mortal enemy of the human world, the realm of devils. This news was said to be revealed by a practitioner who risked returning to the human world after training in the realm of devils for many years. It was said that the realm of devils also had a similar magic game, and its popularity was far greater than that of the human world. The yellow dragon wine, known as the yellow wine in the realm of devils, appeared in the realm of devils a few years ago, just like the magic game. This statement was not groundless because this practitioner brought a bottle of yellow wine produced in the realm of devils and a magic game helmet. Although it was different from the human world, many aspects were similar. As soon as this news came out, it immediately shocked the whole world. Many eyes that were tired of the father-son battle between Rex the Great and Arthur once again focused on the Jianyao territory, because Jianyao territory was the place where these two new things were released. Chapter 1008. The news that the magic game and the yellow dragon wine originated from the demon realm shocked the whole world. For a time, rumors such as Prince Arthur colluded with the demons, and these two things are likely to be the demons' conspiracy, spread quickly. There were even slogans to boycott the magic game and the yellow dragon wine. Jianyao territory encountered unprecedented pressure. The Church of Light, which also jointly released the game, was inevitably questioned. However, most of these doubts were kept in their hearts. No one dared to show it publicly, so the focus of the condemnation was on the scapegoat, Jianyao territory. People such as Garfield or Luke were gloating. They added fuel to the fire behind the scenes, striving to push Arthur into the abyss. Surprisingly, a heavyweight force soon came out to clarify this misunderstanding. Ryuzaku. Most people only knew that the yellow dragon wine was brewed by Samuel according to the incomplete secret recipe of the Dragon Emperor Palgoris in an ancient treasure, but they didn't know that the magic game originally came from the dragons. According to the dragons, the magic game and the yellow dragon wine were products of another ancient world. This ancient civilization had a long history, even before the ancient civilizations such as the Alchemy civilization and the Magaspriest civilization. Dragon Emperor Palgoris took a huge risk to enter the ancient space where the civilization had almost been annihilated by chance. However, the Dragon Emperor was not the only explorer. There were powerful existences from the demon realm who came to this world earlier than him. In that dangerous plane, the two sides temporarily formed an alliance and finally found the treasures left by the predecessors. After a battle, both sides suffered losses, and both sides obtained a part of the treasures. The magic game and the yellow wine were transformed from the ancient wonders in the treasure. The yellow wine and magic game popular in the demon realm came from the same source as the one in the hands of the dragon emperor Palgoris, but the parts were different, so the things made were definitely different. Take the bottle of yellow wine for example. On the surface, it looked similar to the yellow dragon wine in the human world, but after being tasted by an expert, the taste was found to be quite different. In contrast, in addition to the difference in taste, the wine of the demon realm had a stronger aftertaste, while the wine of the human world had a better taste and a slightly weaker aftertaste. There were obvious differences between the two formulas because the yellow dragon wine was modified by Samuel, and Samuel happened to have trained in the demon realm for a period of time, so it was completely reasonable. As for the magic game, the difference was even more obvious. The settings of the races such as humans, elves, dwarves, and dragons were clearly the prototypes of the human world. Compared with the demon realm, the troops, enemies, and dungeons in the game were also quite different. It was impossible to copy it. At this moment, a royal cultivator of a kingdom who had also returned from the realm of devils not long ago also stood out to prove that the magic games in the realm of devils had to rely on a prop called magic television, while the magic games in the human world existed independently. At this time, the truth finally came to light. After the public clarification of the dragons, the Church of Light also stood out and made an important statement. Notices were posted in the branches of the church everywhere. The magic game was deliberately introduced from Ryuzuka by the Church of Light. This game was originally just a secret treasure illusion used by the dragons for their own training. The Church of Light learned that this illusion could enhance the strength of training, so they reached a deal with the dragons to promote it to the world. It was to spread the grace of light to the world and enhance the combat power of all races. In the beginning, the selfishly treasured dragons refused to trade such a treasure, and the church paid a considerable price for it. Now, there were people who actually questioned the church's bad intentions. It was simply ungrateful. Whether it was the magic game or the yellow wine, there was no problem. If anyone dared to question and spread rumors, it would be questioning the authority of the church, and the church would give the most resolute blow. With the announcement from the Church of Light, there was no longer any suspense in the whole matter. Instead, more people became interested in the magic game. In fact, the church did not intend to use this cover. In fact, when they first negotiated with the dragons, the Church of Light had already been informed that the source of the magic game was a certain space of ancient civilization. The negotiator sent by the church to Ryuzuka was not ignorant. Naturally, he knew that there were countless small worlds and civilizations outside of the main plane. Since the Dragon Emperor had personally experienced it, there would definitely be no problem. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ryuzuka took the opportunity to announce that the dragons had successfully developed another tool that originated from an ancient treasure, the magic phone. The function of the magic phone was equivalent to a summoning talisman. It could carry out remote real-time communication, but it could not display images like the summoning talisman. However, its communication function was very powerful. Not only could it maintain a long conversation, but it could also send text messages. Most importantly, the summoning talisman was a one-time consumable, and it was very expensive. As long as there was enough magic power to charge the magic phone, theoretically, it could talk indefinitely. In terms of price, a normal magic phone cost about half the price of a summoning talisman. It could be said that it had an absolute advantage. The magic phone was divided into fixed and mobile versions. The fixed version was equivalent to a fixed communication station, suitable for a fixed room or space, while the mobile version could be carried around. Because the mobile version of the magic phone was very small and could be held in one hand, it was also called the magic phone. Even the practitioners who returned from the demons had never heard of the magic phone. Just as the dragon said, this was the latest treasure developed from an ancient treasure. The appearance of this new treasure attracted everyone's strong interest. The dragons once again announced that they would work together with the Church of Light to promote the magic phone to the world. The dragons provided the technology, and the Church of Light was responsible for the production and promotion. As for the production rights of the magic phone equipment, the dragons gave it to their partner, Rex the Great, which made the Long Huang Empire rejoice. However, as an ally of the Ryo Empire, the elves were not willing to be left out. They introduced the magic weapon jointly developed by the elven Grand Master Finoa and the late dwarf Grand Master Rick, the magic gun. Although there were rumors that similar guns had appeared in the demon realm in recent years, after the previous magic game and the yellow wine incident, almost no one believed it. This was because Grand Master Finoa and Grand Master Rick had carried out long-term collaborative research 1,000 years ago, and they had achieved considerable results. However, due to the bad relationship between the hill dwarves and the elves, a certain research blueprint was divided into two and stored in the Black Rock Mountains and the Emerald Forest Sea respectively. This matter was known to the slightly more experienced alchemists. With the restoration of the relationship between the elves and the dwarves, the blueprint was reunited. The collaborative work of the two Grand Masters could finally be successfully released. The Ryo Empire and the Long Huang Empire quickly reached an agreement. They further deepened their cooperation in magic phones, magic guns, including Yellow Dragon wine and magic games. The corresponding Magic Battle Legion was also established. For a time, the economic and military development of the entire surface world entered a period of climax. As for the previous rumors of colluding with the demons, they had long been discredited. Instead, people like Garfield who spread the rumors behind the scenes were exposed and made into clowns. The Jinyao territory that had been wronged had restored its daily prosperity and peace, but many people clearly saw the increasingly dense haze over the territory. The rift between Arthur and Rex the Great would not be repaired with the resolution of this matter. On the contrary, with the intervention of the Church of Light, the rift would become bigger and bigger. Inner courtyard of the mansion of the Lord of Jinyao. A faint fragrance wafted in the courtyard, calming people's mind. Chenrui slowly sipped the amber-colored fragrant tea in his cup. Ms. Innie was sitting next to him with a sweet smile. Let me guess, the news of colluding with the demon realm. Did you take the initiative to release it? As expected of the top intelligence chief of the fallen angel empire. Dear Innie, you guessed it right. Chenrui shrugged and raised his cup. Isabella smiled and filled it for him. Instead of being exposed sooner or later, it's better for me to add to the fire. So the difference in the formula of the two kinds of yellow wine was also prepared by you long ago? Of course, this is called preparing for a rainy day. It's not impossible for the demon realm and the human world to exchange information. For example, Samuel and the Nero you knew before. Similarly, there are demons who train in the human world. So I have considered this problem early on and made corresponding preparations. When I found Dragon Emperor Palgoris in the Church of Light, Palgoris had already agreed with me. This is to prevent the magic game from being forced to stop for some reason after we leave. So, when are we leaving? Are you homesick? For more than 100 years, even if I live in the capital, I have never had the concept of home in my heart. Isabella's eyes were faintly hazy. But now, Innie. Chenrui gently held her hand. Don't worry. We will go back soon. Now I am waiting for the most suitable time. As long as the two important things are completed, we will go home together. Really? I don't dare to delay your great cause. Isabella's mood suddenly became cheerful. She blinked her eyes, and her voice suddenly rose an octave. Rala, are you not done yet? Hurry up and tear down his tower. Last minute. The fairy Miss Long on the opposite side was staring at the space in the table intently. She didn't even have time to touch the cup of bitter drink that she liked beside her had turned cold. In the space in the table, there were shrunk buildings. The soldiers and siege weapons controlled by the fairy Miss Long were attacking the defense tower on the periphery of the building. Magic card game, a fateful confrontation. Obviously, this was Miss Innie and Miss Rala, teaming up to deal with Chenrui. This is already the third last minute. Miss Innie rolled her eyes at the fairy dragon speechlessly, but the fairy Miss Long, whose attention was on the battlefield, didn't see it at all. Chenrui chuckled. Rala, you did a good job. Unfortunately, I seem to have found your lair. Inni! Rala immediately cast the killer move, Great Summoning Spell. As long as I win him, I can know the secret of Athena's pregnancy. There is such a bet in the relationship, no wonder. Isabella stood up with a smile. Her attractive body did not need to block the sight at all to attract the man's attention. I say, Your Royal Highness, why don't we talk about tonight's life event in advance? Madame Ant's eyes were a little more seductive. She actually sat on someone's lap. AI, this kind of cheating is too obvious. At this time, in another place, there was a huge hill with tombstones on it. From the building signs at the foot of the hill and the guards in the distance, it should be the cemetery of a large family. To be more precise, it was the royal mausoleum of the Mies Kingdom. The Mies Kingdom was an island country. This island country's area was not small, almost comparable to large countries like the Yanshao Kingdom, Noah Kingdom, or Starlight Kingdom. However, due to its remote geographical location, poor resources, and backward economy, it was far inferior to small countries like the Turan Kingdom and the White Tower Kingdom. This royal mausoleum, which buried the remains of the previous royal families, other than the vast area, the other facilities could not compare to the grandeur of those large countries. However, these were only on the surface. If one could see through the surface of the royal mausoleum and go deep underground, one could see the grandeur that was far greater than the surface. The huge underground world was the same as the mausoleum on the surface. This was a graveyard, a world filled with bones. A true hell. Chapter 1009. Time passed day by day. Magic phones had become popular all over the world, and magic firearms had begun to be equipped in the special legions of many countries. However, these did not have any impact on magic games and Yellow Dragon wine. On the contrary, the sales of magic game helmets did not decline but rose to a new level. Although the Jinyao territory was still prosperous and lively, some contradictions hidden in the dark in the territory began to gradually become clear. The Iron Scale, sent by Rex the Great and stationed in Jinyao territory to protect Prince Arthur, had conflicts with the newly established Jade Army in Jinyao territory more than once or twice. One side was the Central Army, sent by the Emperor, and the other side was the local armed forces, which originally represented different interests. Moreover, the Iron Scales seemed to have some kind of acquiescence or hint from the forces behind them, and their provocation against the Jade Army was escalating day by day. The combat effectiveness had always been the weakest link in Jinyao territory. Originally, when Garfield handed over the Jinyao territory, he had taken almost all the military forces with him. The main members of the Jade Army that was later established were the security team recruited by Samuel, who were responsible for both daily security and garrison. Although there was a gold knight like Samuel as the commander, its combat effectiveness was far from comparable with the regular elites like the Iron Scale because of the short time of establishment. However, the Jade Army had a strong reinforcement, which was the Temple Knights from the Church of Light. This time, the Temple Knights followed the Cardinal Glaland to Jinyao territory. Although there were not many of them, each of them was an elite. The leader of the team was Gamundin, the eldest disciple of the Radiant Sword Saint, Pari of the Tsung Thunder Hall of the Holy Mountain of Light, who was also known as the Lightning Sword Saint. Pari had already entered the super rank and became a kingdomized master. He intended to leave the mundane affairs and focus on cultivation to further pursue a higher realm of power. The Tsung Thunder Hall was currently managed by Gamundin. Gamundin was also regarded as the next master of the Tsung Thunder Hall, and would become a core figure of the church alongside the Cardinal and the Chief Inquisitor. With Gamundin's current status, he had already known the real identity of Arthur in the church. Naturally, he dared not neglect it. On the surface, he only protected the prince, Arthur, and coordinated the conflicts in the territory. In fact, most of the time, he was partial to the Jade Army. Due to the extraordinary status of the Church of Light, even the Iron Scale did not dare to offend them easily. Not only did he help train the Jade Army in the Jinyao territory, But he also stood up for the Jade Army many times to resist the provocation of the Iron Scale. One day, as soon as Gudmundan came out of the quiet room, he received a report from the Temple Knights. The Iron Scale had a fierce conflict with the Jade Army in the Flower Tavern, the largest tavern in the city. Some people had been killed in the conflict, and more than one person had been killed. Gudmundan frowned secretly. He was very clear about the reason for the conflict between the Iron Scale and the Jade Army. Although there were many conflicts between the two armies, at most, there were serious injuries. This time, people were killed, and he was afraid that the Iron Scale would not let it go. When Gudmundan arrived at the Flower Tavern, the largest tavern was in a mess. It had been demolished into ruins, and there was a pool of blood on the ground. The surrounding people were talking about it. When Gudmundan asked, he learned that it was the soldiers of the Iron Scale who made trouble in the Flower Tavern. When the Jade Army's security team arrived, the Iron Scale did not stop but injured the captain of the security team. Upon hearing the news, the high-level combatants of both sides rushed over and started fighting. The accumulated resentment for a long time was unleashed. The Iron Scale Army was the first to strike ruthlessly, killing a guard from the Emerald Corps and seriously injuring 2 innocent bystanders. Originally, the two sides had a long history of resentment. This time, the conflict suddenly escalated. Soon, the Flower Tavern became the Blood Tavern. The leaders of the two armies, Samuel and Trinidad, came to hear the news, but they did not calm the situation. Instead, their words were extremely sharp, but they did not start a fight here. Instead, they led the two sides out of the city to the south. Gudmundan was taken aback. The southern suburbs was a plain, the most suitable for fighting. It seemed that today's conflict was more serious than any previous one. He was afraid that there would be a large-scale battle between the two groups of people. Calculating the time, the two sides should be out of the city not long ago. Gudmundan immediately ordered the accompanying knights of the temple to inform the Lord Arthur, and he quickly flew to the southern suburbs. Gudmundan's flying speed was very fast. Soon he found the two sides confronting each other on the plains of the southern suburbs. There were about 400 or 500 people on both sides, led by Samuel and Trinidad. It seemed that they were ready to fight at any moment. "Stop!" Gudmundan's figure flashed and appeared between the two sides. Trinidad was tall and thin, with short brown hair. When he saw Gudmundan, his face showed a sarcastic smile. "You're lucky, Samuel. Your protector is here." Gudmundan frowned. "Both of you are the commanders of the Legion. No matter what happened, you can't be so impulsive." "Please stay calm. Sir Gudmundan, if it's just some insignificant conflict, I'm happy to give you face." Trinidad sneered. "But today, 5 of my brothers have been killed by the Jade Army. This is no longer my personal problem, but it's related to the dignity of the Iron Scale. Please forgive me for not agreeing. Sir Gudmundan is a well-known knight, and the successor of Sir Pari. You should know that this kind of shame can only be washed with sword and blood. If you insist on intervening in this matter as a Knights of the Temple, the Iron Scale will fight to the death even if they know that they are no match for you." These words were full of sarcasm. Gudmundan had always regarded his teacher Pari as a fair and strict role model. When he heard Trinidad calling him a knight, he couldn't help but hesitate. Seeing Gudmundan's hesitation, Trinidad immediately shouted to Samuel, "Samuel, if you're a man, stand up and fight to the death. You're also a soldier of the Empire. Do you only dare to hide behind others like a cowardly woman?" Samuel stood up coldly. "Since you want to die, you can't blame others. Sir Gudmundan, please be the arbiter. I'm going to end this shameless villain today. Trinidad, you keep saying that I'm a coward. You broke my hands and feet when I was imprisoned in prison. Later you used despicable means to frame me with my weapon. You're the real coward. Now I'm here. Do you dare to have a duel to the death with me?" Hearing that it was a duel to the death, not only Gudmundan, but even the soldiers of the army were shocked. Trinidad squinted his eyes and revealed a strange smile. "Do you really think that you have the battle power of a saint just because you reached the saint level earlier than me? Although I reached the saint level later than you, this is a power that truly belongs to me." Since you want to die, why would I refuse? Sir Gamundin, you're a true knight. I believe that you'll make the most fair decision. I now officially accept Samuel's request for a duel to the death. Since both sides were determined to have a fair duel to the death, Gamundin couldn't stop them. Thus, under the witness of the soldiers from both sides, Trinidad and Samuel arrived at an open space. The rules were very simple. There were no restrictions on the venue or the methods used. It was only a duel to the death. Samuel slowly drew out his long saber. Flying centipede. His angry eyes calmed down, faintly revealing a sharp spirit, like a long saber that was about to be unsheathed, about to show off its edge. Trinidad laughed coldly. His body was suddenly enveloped by black and red mist. The mist quickly condensed into a set of equipment. In his right hand was a jet-black broadsword, while in his left hand was a light red tower shield. It seemed to be a set with the red and black half-body armor on his body. His entire body started to emit a thick and dangerous light. Ash's equipment set. Gamundin cried out involuntarily. This was a well-known legendary level equipment set. It was made up of the Ash's blade, sword, the Ash's defense, shield, and the Ash's defense armor. It had powerful offensive and defensive abilities. Especially when the three pieces of equipment appeared on the same person, they could also have the effects of speed up and immense strength. Its power was very shocking. In comparison, Samuel had obviously come in a hurry this time. He was only wearing a set of ordinary leather armor, which formed a sharp contrast. It was very obvious that Trinidad had come prepared. Even this provocation was premeditated. It was no wonder that he would reveal such a strange smile when he heard about a duel to the death. Although it seemed unfair, the equipment factor was within the scope of the rules. Therefore, it was not convenient for Gamundin to stop the duel. Trinidad's smile had already become sinister. In fact, Samuel's suggestion of a duel to the death was exactly what he wanted. This was because Prince Garfield had given him a mission a long time ago, and that was to kill Samuel. This, Ash's equipment set, was given to him by Garfield. The tower shield and armor had a strong immunity effect against splash damage. This was to defend against the annihilation of Dawn, released by Samuel's flying centipede. The Ash's blade had a special poison effect. As long as it could cut the skin, it would cause the negative effects of paralysis and deceleration. Not only that, there was also a set of true black potions. On the way to the southern suburbs, Trinidad had secretly drunk it. Now that it was within the expiration date, his combat power was increased to the limit. This battle, he had to kill Samuel. Samuel also recognized the Ash's equipment set, but his expression was still calm and the flying centipede was placed horizontally in front of his chest. At the moment when Gamundin announced the start of the duel, the soldiers only saw a blur, and Samuel had already disappeared. They only saw a blur in front of Trinidad, as if there was a shadow flashing. Not only the shadow of a person, but also the shadow of a light blue sword. Trinidad waved his big shield continuously, and from time to time, dazzling sparks appeared. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand. The weaker soldiers did not see it clearly, but as the arbitrator, Gamundin, saw it clearly. His expression changed slightly. In the blink of an eye, the two sides had already exchanged more than a dozen blows, and Trinidad was completely on the defense. He did not counterattack even once. This was not some kind of strategy, but because Samuel had been suppressing Trinidad, who was wearing the Ash's equipment set. In fact, in Gamundin's eyes, every slash of Samuel had a huge flaw, and Trinidad could see it too. However, Samuel's speed was too fast. Before Trinidad could grasp the flaw to counterattack, the next slash had already arrived. Speed was the only thing that could not be broken. The more Gamundin watched, the more surprised he became. That kind of attack speed was too shocking. If it were him, and he only used the strength of Trinidad, he would also be at a disadvantage. What surprised Gamundin was that Samuel, who maintained such a high-speed attack, still had a long and steady breath. There was not the slightest hint of disorder, as if to him, This was just an ordinary attack rhythm. Trinidad, who was at a disadvantage, could not believe everything in front of him. He had drunk the black potion and put on the Ash's equipment set, but he was completely suppressed by Samuel. Moreover, Samuel's speed was so shocking. If it was not for the defense and ability of the Ash's equipment set, he was afraid that he would have been defeated. In Jinyao City, the Temple Knights, who did not know that the duel in the southern suburbs had begun, hurriedly rushed to the Lord's mansion to invite Chenrei. Your Highness, the situation this time is very serious. Sir Gamundan asked me to invite you to go immediately. Got it. Chenrei nodded. Men, prepare the carriage to the southern suburbs. Please forgive my rudeness, Your Highness, but I'm afraid that we are running out of time. Let's go on horseback, otherwise the conflict may have already begun. Begun? Chenrei casually replied. Suddenly, he felt something. His eyes flashed, and he said meaningfully, Yes, it has begun. Chapter 10:10. Jinyao City, Southern Suburbs. Trinidad, who was still standing in place, had begun to retreat step by step. Every step he took left a deep pit that reached his ankles on the ground. Now even those soldiers who couldn't see clearly understood that Trinidad was suppressed by Samuel. The soldiers of the Jade Army showed excitement, but the faces of the people of the Iron Scale were very ugly, especially some leaders. They knew Trinidad's plan in advance, but they didn't expect that the plan couldn't keep up with the changes at all. The strength shown by Samuel far exceeded expectations. Even if Trinidad made such preparations, such an unexpected situation still happened. The depression in Trinidad's heart at this time could be imagined. One of the main purposes of the Ashes set was to defend against Samuel's powerful killer move, Morning Extinction, but now Samuel didn't even use this move, and he was forced into a dangerous situation. The tower's shield was a large shield with a wide protection area, but it was far heavier than ordinary shields. It required more strength to swing it. Especially in the face of Samuel's ghostly movement and lightning-like close-range attacks, Trinidad began to feel the pressure he was suffering more and more. The shield in his hand became heavier and more strenuous. The expected restraint had become self-defeating. What surprised him even more was that in the intelligence obtained in the past, Samuel's endurance had always been a weakness. However, the other party maintained such high-speed movement and attack for such a long time, yet he didn't show any fatigue at all. It was unbelievable. The sharpness of the flying centipede that was said to be made by the mechanic Grand Master Prince Arthur was beyond imagination. Even the Ashes guard on his body couldn't completely resist the terrifying sharpness. There were already several cracks. The sharpness on the sword penetrated into the inside through the cracks, and there were many wounds. Moreover, it was bleeding non-stop. He had to divert a part of his power to stabilize the injury, which reduced his combat power imperceptibly. Trinidad didn't know that in addition to the attributes of sharpness and deepening wounds, Flying Centipede could also increase waving speed by 50%. It could also slowly recover stamina by absorbing the enemy's power. In addition, Samuel's Star Disciple title had the characteristic of Running Thunder, which could increase attack speed and movement speed. Therefore, Samuel could exert such terrifying speed. Trinidad's intelligence was outdated. Samuel's fighting style was now very different from the past. The characteristic was speed is unbreakable. In the previous days, Samuel trained with Isabella and Crobolus almost every day. Compared with Crobolus' absolute suppression, the mistress Isabella, who had the breeze shadow boots and the talent of flash, helped Samuel more. Of course, he was defeated miserably every time. As for endurance, the original shortcoming, it had also made great progress under the hellish special training arranged by Chenrei. The current Samuel was no longer a cultivator who had barely advanced to the martial saint level by relying on external forces. Instead, he was a martial saint who had truly mastered and consolidated his power. He was only one step away from breaking through a small realm and entering the intermediate martial saint level. Damn it! The black potions had a time limit. Trinidad knew that he would lose without a doubt if this continued. It was likely that he would die. It seemed that he had to use his final trump card. Trinidad immediately forced Samuel away with a shield strike, and his body emitted a strong light. The blade of ashes was inserted into the ground, and the cracks on the ground spread toward Samuel. Samuel rose into the air, and the cracked lines shone with a fiery red light. The power of fire containing a strong territory erupted like dozens of erupting volcanoes. Samuel retreated faster than he moved forward, avoiding the strongest flame that erupted. At the same time, he waved Fei-ho in his hand quickly to disperse the approaching flames. Gumundon shook his head secretly. Although Trinidad's momentum was amazing, he was already a spent force. It was obvious that the outcome of this battle had been decided. Just when Samuel was forced to retreat, Gumundon suddenly sensed something. He looked up and saw a huge black shadow suddenly appeared above Samuel's position, flying down towards Samuel. "Giant dragon!" Gumundon exclaimed. Samuel also reacted at this time. His body flew backward in an incredible manner, and he crossed the huge black shadow. He landed on the ground, and the armor on his shoulder was torn open, dripping with blood. The giant dragon glided to Trinidad's side. There was a knife wound on its neck, and even its scales were cut open. Blood kept oozing out, but for its huge body, this wound was not even worth mentioning. This was a saint dragon. Saint dragons were the most powerful type of dragons. They had strong vitality and offensive and defensive abilities. Despicable! Gumundon appeared in front of Samuel and glared at Trinidad. "Is this a fair duel? I don't think this is against the rules of a duel." Trinidad shook his head and revealed a sinister smile. "Don't forget, I'm a dragon knight, and he is too. Samuel, you didn't expect this, did you? In the past few months, I've also passed the dragon's trial and become a dragon knight. Please allow me to introduce my new companion, Brecklin." Samuel had already drunk a bottle of healing potion, and he stared coldly at the Saint Dragon. "You still remember me, Samuel?" The Saint Dragon grinned, and his sharp teeth slowly grinded, revealing a murderous aura of hatred. "Last time in the final trial, you and little Andrew used a trick to severely injure me. Not only did you cause me to lose the championship, but I was also bedridden for 3 months. Today I'll repay you. The environment of the trial is equal, but you're not good at using tactics. Besides, if it weren't for the trial, you'd already be dead," Samuel said coldly. "What I didn't expect was that you would shamelessly take advantage of someone else's difficulties. You're a disgrace to Ryuzaku. As for you, Trinidad, you don't deserve to be called a Dragon Knight. Since you're talking about tactics," Trinidad laughed heartily, "then have a taste of tactics today. This is your last chance in life. Lord Gumundon, please step aside. This is a duel between 2 Dragon Knights. According to the rules of Ryuzaku, outsiders are not allowed to interfere, not even the Church of Light." A dragon's roar suddenly came from the distant sky, and a figure instantly appeared in the field. It was a young boy about 12 or 13 years old, and he had a delicate appearance. It was hard to believe that the dragon's roar came from such a young boy. "Andrew?" Samuel looked at the boy in surprise. "How did you get here? Weren't you in Ryuzaku?" "I snuck out," Andrew said, panting. "Judging from the situation, you're in trouble." "Little Andrew," Brecklin said coldly, "you still don't understand the situation. This is a duel to the death. Are you sure you want to participate?" The young boy was shocked. He looked at Trinidad, who was opposite him, and then looked at the ferocious Brecklin. Suddenly he smiled. "Looks like I came at the right time." Samuel nodded at Andrew forcefully, and his gaze fell on Trinidad. "Then, let's continue the duel of the Dragon Knights." In the distance, Shinrui and Isabella followed the Temple Knights and galloped all the way. They had already passed through the city gate in the southern suburbs. Rala had received guidance from Ben Hong for the past 2 days, and she had begun to go into seclusion again to consolidate and comprehend the use of demigod-level power. "What are you thinking about?" Isabella, who was riding together with Shinrui, felt that the man behind her was a little absent-minded and asked. With Isabella's current strength, she could easily compress her voice to transmit her voice. I'm calculating the time. Shinrui gently kissed Isabella's hair. Tonight, there will be a very important battle, whether it's for me or for Arthur. In the distance. This distance did not refer to the southern suburbs of the Jinyao territory, but a place far away, an island country. Underground of the royal mausoleum of the Mies kingdom. What are you thinking about? It was also a woman's question. I'm calculating the time. The other, Shinrui, answered the same. Calculating the time? Yes, Bilia. Oh, sorry, Solange, I'm calculating when the sacrificial ceremony will begin. I'm feeling a little nervous. The one who asked the question was the Archbishop of the Eastern District of the Black Death Apostles, Solange. She also had another identity as the head of the Academic Affairs Department of the Starlight Academy, Bilia. To be more precise, she was also a descendant of the royal family of the Cloud Empire. Although the Cloud Empire had been destroyed for many years, the remaining forces still had a place in the mysterious church, and the main force was concentrated in the southern district. The Starlight Academy that Solange was in was under the jurisdiction of the mysterious church's eastern district. As a direct descendant of the southern district, she only had the title of a deacon here, but unexpectedly, she met Shura. Due to the relationship of interests, the two of them easily hooked up. With Shura's help, her position unexpectedly rose, and she actually took the position of the Archbishop of the Eastern District. This greatly increased the strength of the Soaring Cloud faction, and Shura also revealed his true strength, becoming the first envoy of destruction, and participated in the most important God's Descent sacrificial ceremony. You can also be nervous? Solange smiled charmingly. In my impression, the word nervous has nothing to do with you. When it comes to the unknown, it's inevitable. Shura shrugged, approached Solange, and reached one of his hands into the loose robe, grabbing a bulging bosom. There are many ways to deal with nervousness, and I want to choose the most beautiful one. Wait. Solange looked at Shura reproachfully. At this time, you still have such emotions? Don't treat the sacrificial ceremony as a child's play. It can bring us great benefits, and if the gods punish us, it can turn a blessing into a curse. Shura smiled and pinched the top of the bosom, but he did not pull his hand out. Instead, he slid it all the way down, into the moist part of the jungle. What exactly is the benefit? If you don't tell me, then I'll eat this benefit of yours first. Solange had always been dissolute, and being teased by him like this, she was naturally aroused. But at this time, she really did not dare to indulge herself. She quickly grabbed the mischievous hand. Don't mess around! The power of the gods can see through everything. This is a large-scale sacrificial ceremony that only happens once in 100 years. If we lose the favor of the gods, it will not be worth it. The favor of the gods? Shura showed a look of interest, and his hand also stopped. Solange hurriedly explained. Generally speaking, the gods will bestow the corresponding power to all the believers who participate in the sacrificial ceremony, but only the favored ones can get the real power. The stronger the aura of destruction and killing in the body, the more recognized by the gods, and the more benefits they will get. They can be transformed by the gods into soul transformation, and receive the heart of domination bestowed by the gods, greatly increasing their strength and potential. In times of crisis, they can also summon the will of the gods and integrate with the power of the gods, exerting incredible power to defeat the enemy. Soul transformation, heart of domination? Shura's red eyes flashed a trace of indecipherable meaning, and he pulled his hand back. Is there really such a great benefit? Like you, I am also participating in this kind of sacrificial ceremony for the first time, but I can answer you with certainty yes. Solange nodded. Only those who have soul transformation and the heart of domination can become the true core. If you can get the favor, then congratulations, you will have the opportunity to enter the core of the church, and even become one of the future rulers of the church. Otherwise, no matter how much credit you have or how powerful you are, you will not succeed. However, any reward must be paid, and what we pay is absolute loyalty and a trace of the power of the soul. Pay the soul? Shura frowned. Yes, this can ensure the absolute loyalty of the favored ones. Those who can come here have passed through layers of tests, including you. You should be very clear, but it is inevitable that there will be people who have distracting thoughts. These people, under the soul of the gods, will have nowhere to hide. However, even if we are the most loyal believers, the gods will not accept our humble souls. This trace of the soul will fuse with the main altar, and become the link between the gods and us. Shura's eyes flashed. In other words, if someone destroys the main altar, then it will cut off the connection between us and the gods? We will no longer be able to accept the power given by the gods? Damage to the main altar will not only cause us to lose most of the power of the gods, but our souls will also be severely damaged, and even lose our lives. Solange said sternly. So this is our most important base. Once it is invaded or destroyed, the consequences will be unimaginable. Especially during the main sacrificial ceremony, all the blood condensed by the bone towers will be dedicated to the main altar. This is the time when the defense is at its weakest, so no matter what, we must protect its safety. I understand. This is also the greatest responsibility of the messengers of destruction. Shura nodded. I am going to Lord Kirk's. Solange put on her mask. Isn't it almost time for the great destroyer Crutchwit to summon all the messengers of destruction? You should also get ready. Shura also picked up his mask, revealing a strange smile. When the sacrificial ceremony is over, remember to clean yourself up. I will give you the most unforgettable night. Solange winked at him and slowly walked away. Looking at her receding figure, Shura slowly put the mask on his face, covering the meaningful smile. I promise, this will be the most unforgettable night. Chapter 10-11. Jinyao Territory, Southern Suburbs. On the ground, the soldiers of the Iron Scale and the Jade Army all raised their heads and looked at the sky. In the sky, there were two huge figures. Two rare saint dragons and two legendary dragon knights were engaged in a duel of life and death. The two knights were not holding ordinary weapons, but a terrifying giant spear of about 10 meters long dragon spear. This was the most common aerial combat weapon of the dragon knights. It could be used to fight directly or to shoot. Although this kind of spear had a special structure where humans could hold it with one hand, ordinary people could not pick it up at all, let alone brandishing it in battle. Only the extraordinary and well-trained dragon knights could wield the dragon's spear freely. This kind of weapon was quite lethal. Even the dragon with extremely strong defense would be severely injured. The two sides had been circling back and forth for several rounds. The smaller saint dragon was Andrew. There were several criss-crossed wounds on his abdomen, especially the deepest wound that spread all the way to his back. The scales were lifted up, which looked shocking. Brecklin's dragon body seemed to be much stronger. There were also many wounds. The most obvious were the two bloody holes on the side of his abdomen. Blood kept dripping down when flying. Although Andrew was one of the young geniuses of the dragons, he was too young after all. His current strength was the peak of Pseudo-Saint, which was the peak of the Demon Emperor. Brecklin was much older than Andrew, and she had a very strong defense talent. Her strength had reached the early stage of the Demon Overlord. Samuel and Trinidad were both early stage Saint. Samuel's combat power was better than Trinidad's, but in this kind of aerial battle, Samuel's greatest speed advantage could not be exerted. Overall, Samuel's side was much inferior. They relied on their tacit cooperation and flexibility to maintain a stalemate. After a long time, they gradually fell into a disadvantage. The two giant dragons circled in the air and flew back. Andrew's body shook as he activated some kind of secret technique. His speed suddenly accelerated, and he rushed straight toward Brecklin. Brecklin opened his mouth, and a mass of dragon breath containing the aura of destruction sprayed towards Andrew. In fact, he was preparing the power of his domain, and he was guarding against the blind spots on his left and right, especially behind him. This move was called shapeshift, which was Andrew's usual combat skill. The one rushing in front was not the real body, but an illusion. The real body would appear somewhere. Brecklin had experienced this move in the previous trial battle. Andrew had also used it in the previous few rounds. Therefore, the first dragon breath only used 30% of its power. The purpose was to break the illusion. The real power was accumulated to guard against a sudden attack from the side or behind. However, an unexpected thing happened. The dragon breath did not penetrate Andrew's illusion, but it hit his body solidly. Andrew had the strength of the Demon Emperor. He was hit head-on by the Demon Overlord-level dragon breath. Even if Brecklin did not use her full strength, this blow was not light. The scales on his chest were all badly mutilated. Jing Tailong's combat style was the complete opposite of his introverted appearance. With a muffled snort, his speed did not decrease but increased. He rushed toward Brecklin, and he flew in front of her in the blink of an eye. Brecklin did not expect Andrew not to use shapeshift. Instead, he rushed up at the risk of taking his dragon breath. With this miscalculation, it was too late to dodge. Brecklin gritted her teeth, and the accumulated territory power brewed in her whole body. She was like a hedgehog, ready to strike at any moment. If Andrew did not dodge, even with Samuel's protection, he would be seriously injured or even killed under that powerful countershock. Unexpectedly, Andrew did not intend to dodge at all, and he slammed over. The people below only saw a bright light and a faint scream. At the same time, their vision was strongly distorted. When their vision was restored, the two huge figures in the air seemed to have lost their strength at the same time and fell down. Boom! Boom! Two tremors came one after another. There were two big pits on the ground like meteorites falling. It could be seen that the falling force was violent. It was by no means just an ordinary weight. Gamundan saw it clearly. At the moment when the two dragons collided, Andrew suffered a violent impact. The scales all over his body burst out with blood. At the same time, Samuel's dragon spear also penetrated Brecklin's body. In pain, Brecklin bit Andrew's neck and tore off a large piece of flesh. Trinidad's reaction was half a beat slower. When the dragon spear stabbed into Andrew's chest, it only penetrated a few inches before it was cut off by Samuel's blade. Samuel's next move was that morning light extermination. The flying centipede exploded into countless fragments, like rain, splashing on Brecklin's huge body. This move was extremely close, and the sharpness of the fragments was astonishing. The damage caused was also quite terrifying. Even though Brecklin's body had a strong defense, she could not withstand it. She suffered serious injuries, and with a scream, she fell from the sky. Also falling was the seriously injured Andrew. But Brecklin quickly got up, and Andrew seemed to be exhausted and could not get up again. The two figures in the air were still intertwining. The lightning-like blade light suddenly flourished, and a figure fell to the ground with a muffled groan, as if he had fainted. It was Trinidad. After defeating Trinidad, Samuel's figure flashed, and he instantly stood beside Andrew. He held his long blade horizontally, and stared at Brecklin, who was slowly walking over, and asked, "Andrew, how are you?" In the close combat just now, Samuel had to divide a part of his strength to protect Andrew, and he had suffered a rather fierce backlash from Brecklin. In addition to the injuries he had received from Brecklin's sneak attack, his injuries were also not light. "I won't die yet," Andrew replied weakly. He already had no strength to turn his head, but his pupils moved towards Brecklin in front of him. "Actually, that guy is not much better than me." "Little Andrew, you lunatic! Idiot!" Brecklin gritted her teeth and said, "Why would you fight to this extent for a human?" "Because dragon knights are the companions of giant dragons." "Companions?" Brecklin shouted angrily. "Is your brain fried by the things those old men instilled into you? Samuel is my companion, and that person is not yours. Idiot! Let me help you wake up. One more step, and you will die." Although Samuel's body was slightly trembling because of the pain, his hand holding the blade was still firm. Most of the fragments of the flying centipede were now in Brecklin's body. Even if it had an automatic recovery function, under the power of the same dragon, it could not be recovered. What he was holding was a spare long blade, which was the one he used to defeat Trinidad just now. "This is a duel of life and death between you and that Trinidad, not between me and Andrew," Brecklin sneered and said. "Let's not talk about how much power you have left now. My uncle is the demigod Elder Stanwell of Ryuzaku. You are just a mere human. How dare you kill the most honorable Saint Dragon?" Samuel did not waste his breath. The long blade in his hand glowed with a strong light. Obviously, he was gathering the last of his strength to make a fatal blow. Brecklin stared at Samuel for a moment, but did not move forward. Suddenly, his body shook, and countless broken blades flew out, stained with blood. In the blink of an eye, the dragon's body had turned into a human. He looked like he was covered in wounds, but he sat on the ground. "Humph! Little Andrew, you've won. But I did not lose to you. It was because of that fellow." As he said that, Brecklin pointed at the unconscious Trinidad. "That fellow lost this duel and actually pretended to be dead on the ground. This fellow actually fought with me just now. It's a disgrace to me. If you don't get up now, I'll tear you into pieces." The last sentence was obviously meant for Trinidad. Trinidad's body trembled, and he finally woke up. This could be said to be a complete disgrace. Even the soldiers of the Iron Scale had an unnatural expression on their faces. "It's not just the ash set. The power you used just now. There's also the effect of the black potion, right?" Samuel pointed his long blade at Trinidad, who was climbing up, and revealed a look of disdain. "You're the fellow who only knows how to rely on external forces. It's also a disgrace for me to duel with someone like you. Since you've already lost, then your life is now mine." Trinidad's body trembled, and large beads of sweat dripped down his face. "Wait, I still have something to say." Samuel did not give him a chance to delay. With a shake of his long blade, he slowly walked over. Trinidad retreated step by step in fear. He accidentally tripped and fell to the ground. He said in horror, "You can't kill me! Samuel!" A familiar voice rang out. Chinray and the others had rushed over. Trinidad hurriedly shouted, "His Royal Highness! Samuel wants to kill me!" Chinray flipped over and dismounted. He had already seen the situation in the field. Without waiting for him to ask, Gamundan hurriedly walked over and reported what had just happened to the Holy Sun. At this moment, 3 streams of light flashed in the sky. In the blink of an eye, there were 3 more people in the field. "Lord Phageris!" Trinidad's tense nerves finally relaxed completely. "Help!" One of the people who came was the leader of the Long Huang Empire's dragon riders, Phageris. Phageris was a national-level expert, and his niece was the wife of the second prince, Garfield. With this relationship, the two of them were quite close. When Samuel injured Garfield, who had molested Veronica in the Purple Garden Palace, it was he who heard the news and came to capture Samuel. However, Phageris was not completely on the second prince's side. In his early years, he had been greatly indebted to Rex. Because of this, his family had survived, and he had sworn loyalty to Rex. Now that his strength had advanced to the superclass, he did not retreat to cultivate like ordinary superclass experts. Instead, he continued to work for Rex. Seeing Trinidad's expression, Phageris frowned. "Samuel! What do you want?" "This is the result of a duel to the death." Chinray's voice sounded. "It's obvious that His Excellency Trinidad has been defeated. One is the leader of the Jade Army, and the other is the leader of the Iron Scale. You are not representing individuals, but Jinyao territory and the entire empire. What duel to the death? This is nonsense." Phageris immediately put a big hat on them and then criticized them. It was obvious that he did not recognize the result of the duel. "Lord Phageris, this is a fair duel between the dragon riders. All the soldiers here can testify. As the arbitrator, I don't think this is nonsense." Gamundan's voice sounded. You have no right to speak here, Phaedrus said calmly. This is the Empire's internal affairs. Even if your teacher Pari was here, he has no right to interfere. I'm just a knight who witnessed a fair, Gumundun said. He suddenly felt a terrifying pressure and could not speak for a moment. Brecklin! Another voice sounded. A man with a gloomy expression walked to Brecklin's side. Who has the guts to hurt you like this? Uncle, Brecklin said embarrassedly. It's just a duel. Gumundun was shocked. This man was the elder of Ryuzuku that Brecklin had mentioned, the demigod Stanwell. Duel? Little Andrew of the parent family does not have such strength. Stanwell glanced at Samuel, who was treating Andrew, and said coldly, Was it that guy who did it? Samuel felt an extremely terrifying aura lock on him. It was as if the other party could turn him into ashes with a single thought. This? Whose uncle is this? When this voice sounded, Samuel suddenly felt that the terrifying aura was dispelled by some kind of power. The one who spoke was Chinrei. He had already walked in front of Samuel. This time, even Phaedrus was shocked. Stanwell was the demigod elder of Ryuzuku. He was originally the most trusted person of the Dragon Emperor Palgoris, and had almost replaced Melia as the Great Elder. Later, for some unknown reason, he gradually fell out of favor, but he was still an important member of the Elder Council. Arthur actually addressed Stanwell in such a rude manner. The ignorant were truly fearless. It's just a fair duel. Chinrei smiled. This smile, in the eyes of Phaedrus, was simply courting death. This prince, who should be from Jinyao territory, gave Stanwell a strange feeling. He did not know what method he used to dispel the oppression he had on Samuel. It was most likely some kind of tool. Suddenly hearing the other party being so rude, Stanwell raised his eyebrows. Just as he was about to teach this ignorant person an unforgettable lesson, he suddenly heard a somewhat familiar voice. Isn't that so? Brother-in-law. Hearing the words, brother-in-law, Stanwell's heart skipped a beat. Although this prince looked different, the more he looked at that smile, the more he felt that it was familiar. He could not help but recall the time when he was abused by someone in Ryuzuku in front of a group of juniors. A chill ran down his spine. That's right, it's this guy. Melia's son-in-law. A terrifying human who could kill me in an instant. It's true that Ryuzuku and Jinyao territory are working together, but I did not expect this guy to be the lord of Jinyao territory, the third prince of the Longhuang Empire. This is too much. No wonder His Majesty the Dragon Emperor strictly ordered everything related to this human in Ryuzuku to be kept a secret. No wonder Groas always stayed here. Stanwell turned around and glanced at Groas, who came with him. Groas nodded, completely confirming his guess. Young people need to be tempered to grow, that's right. It's just a duel. Stanwell, who quickly reacted, said with certainty. A fair duel. This time, not only Phaedrus and the others, but even Brecklin was dumbfounded. Is this still the uncle who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance? When did he become so reasonable? Chapter 10-12. Stanwell's words not only ignored the trauma caused by the murderer, Samuel, to Brecklin, but they also announced the validity of this duel. No one would think that Stanwell was moved by the ignorant and fearless Prince Arthur's words. Compared with an empire's prince, even if he was a mechanic Grand Master, a demigod powerhouse was still in existence that must be looked up to. Prince Arthur was so rude because he came a step late and didn't hear what Brecklin said. He didn't even know the identity and strength of the uncle in front of him. The reason why Stanwell changed his tone was the glance he gave to Groas. The two elders should have negotiated secretly. It must be related to Prince Arthur's filial piety to Groas. No wonder Prince Royal Highness seemed fearless after Groas appeared. Only the two demigod dragons elders, Stanwell and Groas, knew that it was not Arthur, who was ignorant and fearless, but everyone including Phaedrus. Very good. Chinrei nodded to Brecklin. You have a reasonable uncle. Brecklin didn't react from the surprise for a while, and she nodded subconsciously. The corner of Stanwell's eyes twitched, and he finally acquiesced to the title of reasonable. Fortunately, Chinray didn't continue, but he came to Fadgerus and pointed to Brecklin. General Fadgerus, look, that young man is injured like this, and his uncle thinks that this is a fair duel. Do you think this is just nonsense? When Brecklin heard the word young man, she was about to jump up, but Stanwell glared at her. She immediately lowered her head. Gudmundan once went to Ryuzuku with the church representatives to negotiate the magic game, so he happened to see Stanwell. He immediately said, Madam Fadgerus shouldn't question Sir Stanwell's decision, right? This is a fair duel between dragon knights, and it's a duel of life and death. That's right. Chinray was about to continue, but Fadgerus frowned and took a few steps forward. His Royal Highness, Trinidad is the Deputy Legion Commander of the Iron Scale personally appointed by His Majesty. Like Samuel, he is also a member of the Dragon Riders. He is also the Supreme Commander of the Capital Legion stationed in Jinyao territory this time. No matter what the reason is, if you must put him to death, His Highness will certainly not be able to explain it to His Majesty. These words not only mentioned Rex the Great, but also pointed out the fact that Samuel and Trinidad were both in the Dragon Riders, and Fadgerus herself was the Legion Commander of the Dragon Riders. To a certain extent, she also controlled Samuel's position in the Dragon Riders. Whether it was for public or private reasons, Prince Arthur should give this face. I understand. Chinray showed a thoughtful expression and slowly nodded. Seeing this scene, Trinidad finally breathed a sigh of relief. As everyone knew, Samuel was loyal to Prince Arthur. If Prince Arthur asked Samuel to let him live, there would definitely be no problem. Then, Samuel. Chinray glanced at Samuel. Now carry out the result of this duel of life and death. The loser dies. Fadgerus was shocked. She did not expect that after she explained the pros and cons to Prince Arthur, the other side still did not show the slightest mercy. This was equivalent to slapping the face of the Dragon Riders, a superclass strong. Trinidad thought he had heard it wrong. When he saw Samuel approaching step by step with a long sword in his hand, he then reacted. He did not know what tool he used, but his body suddenly turned into a red light and fled into the distance. The red light was fleeting, and in the blink of an eye, it had turned into a light spot. However, this light spot then quickly enlarged. Trinidad's whole body suddenly fell back. Obviously, this was not his own will. You let your dragon's companion be injured to this extent, and you still dare to run away in a cowardly manner. Stanwell snorted coldly, and there was a cold glint in his eyes. No. Before Trinidad could say, mercy, his body suddenly split into pieces, and the split body instantly turned into nothingness. What was left was the damaged, ashes suit, that fell to the ground, looking dim and lifeless. That kind of guy is not my companion, Brecklin muttered in a low voice. Cut the crap, Stanwell said impatiently. Don't you think it's not embarrassing enough? Go back with me. Brecklin had been afraid of this uncle since she was young. She did not dare to say much. She endured the pain, stood up, and walked to Stanwell's side. Stanwell glanced at Groas, and did not say anything to Fadgerus. His figure flickered, and he disappeared with Brecklin. Fadgerus did not expect that there would be such a turn of events. Trinidad was killed by Stanwell, and her brain could not wrap around it for a moment. Groas noticed that Stanwell did not dare to look at Chinray. He knew that this guy killed Trinidad because he wanted to vent his anger. He shook his head secretly, and waved at Andrew. A layer of silver-white light suddenly appeared on Andrew's body, and his serious injuries healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Andrew had already taken the medicine given by Samuel, and now with the help of Groas, his recovery speed was even faster. His figure slowly changed, and he turned into the original handsome little boy, his body covered with terrible scars. However, the Saint Dragon race's recovery ability was extremely strong. Now that his injuries were under control, it was only a matter of time before he fully recovered. Thank you, Lord Groas. Andrew got up and bowed. Little Andrew, I heard that you were grounded. You snuck out this time, right? As for your father, Pylon, don't worry, I'll go and put in a good word for you. Thank you, Lord. Andrew showed a look of gratitude. Groas looked at Samuel and added, You have a good partner. On the side, Phaedrus's expression became even uglier. Groas's words revealed his undisguised admiration for Samuel. It should be known that Groas was a demigod, and at the same time, one of the elders that Dragon Emperor Palgoris relied on. He held real power in his hands. In this way, Samuel's status in the Dragon Riders would only get higher and higher, and the possibility of excluding him from the army was almost zero. Although the death of Trinidad was caused by the Ryuzuka's elder Stanwil, the real cause was the coercion of Prince Arthur. In this incident, the two great dragons' elders, Stanwil and Groas, were on the side of Arthur. Phaedrus could no longer say anything. She just said coldly to Chinray, Today's matter ends here. However, His Royal Highness, no matter what the cause of this incident is, the result is that the army commander appointed by His Majesty died in your territory. You need to give His Majesty an explanation. Chinray smiled and said something that surprised Phaedrus. General Phaedrus, can I understand that because of Trinidad's death, a conspiracy against Jinyao territory, or against me, the third prince, was shattered? Phaedrus's eyes narrowed slightly. What does your Royal Highness mean by this? Generals should be very clear about what the Iron Scale has done in Jinyao territory during this time. Especially today, after causing trouble in the Flower Tavern, they injured the Jade Army's guards. In addition to the soldiers, 7 innocent people have died, and the entire Flower Tavern was razed to the ground. Knight Gemunden just explained the whole situation of the duel to me in detail. At the beginning, it was Trinidad who took the initiative to provoke me. During the duel, he took out the ashes set and drank the black potion. It was obvious that this was premeditated. Not only that, when he was defeated by Samuel, he actually summoned the dragons for a sneak attack. If it weren't for Samuel's dragons coming in time, Samuel would have been the one who turned into ashes. If this isn't a conspiracy, then what is? This is just a personal grudge between him and Samuel. The so-called conspiracy is just your Royal Highness' guess. There is no evidence. Phaedrus replied coldly. He was a supermaster, yet he was questioned by a mere prince like this. If Groas wasn't by his side, he would have already flared up or left in a huff. Arthur. Prince didn't seem to feel the coldness in Phaedrus's voice at all, and then said, Unfortunately, Trinidad is a disappointing idiot. Even with this advantage, he still lost to Samuel. Especially greedy for life and afraid of death. After losing the duel, he fled. Even the dragons who left showed contempt for him. What I don't understand is, how can such a person be a dragon knight? The last sentence made Groas nod his head, and at the same time, it was equivalent to slapping Phaedrus in the face. Phaedrus's heart was already angry, but Chinray didn't want to stop the topic at all. There's one more thing that I'm curious about. Why did the general appear so coincidentally when Trinidad lost the duel and was facing the threat of death? I can explain this question, Groas said. I've stayed in Jinyao territory for a long time, especially recently. I've gained some understanding of power, so I wanted to return to Ryuzuku to train. Elder Stanwil will be my successor, and this time, Phaedrus accompanied Elder Stanwil here, specifically to hand over some work. However, Phaedrus sensed some changes at the last moment, so Stanwil and I accompanied him here. It should be that Trinidad used some kind of SOS unique to Dragon Riders. Speaking of which, that Trinidad only knows how to take advantage of the situation, and he doesn't have the slightest fighting spirit and spirit of a knight, so he really deserved to die. Phaedrus, I don't want to see this kind of person become a companion of the dragons, even if he's just a candidate. Understood, Lord Groas. Everyone saw what happened today, and Groas's words were very fair, so Phaedrus could only swallow her anger. It seems that I've been overthinking, General. I apologize to you. Chenray smiled faintly, but it was a pity that neither his tone nor his expression had the slightest intention of apologizing. Phaedrus raised her eyebrows, and then she heard Chenray say another sentence. As for the instructions that General mentioned, I'll now go with you to Yerodisha to meet His Majesty. Phaedrus was surprised. In fact, she knew very well that Trinidad's actions were not all inspired by Garfield. Rex the Great was also behind him, and his purpose was to target Jinyao territory. Prince Arthur's performance had long aroused Rex the Great's fear. In the battle for imperial power, it was not uncommon for father and son to kill each other. Although it had not escalated to the worst stage, Rex the Great's intention to suppress Jinyao territory was beyond doubt. For Arthur, to be able to manage Jinyao territory to such an extent, it could be said that he was extremely talented, and it was impossible for him not to see through Rex the Great's intention. Moreover, Jinyao territory was only extremely economically developed, but its military power was extremely weak, and it was far from being able to compete with the entire empire. Therefore, today, Arthur contributed to Trinidad's death at all costs, and there were signs that they were going to fall out with each other. Under such circumstances, he still chose to go directly to the capital to meet Rex the Great, which really puzzled Phaedrus. Your Highness, Isabella, who was covered with a veil, said, I'll go with you. There's no need. Shenrei shook his head. I'm just making some things clear to His Majesty. As for safety, with General Phaedrus around, there will definitely be no problem. If we are fast enough, we should be able to arrive today, right, General? Go alone? Phaedrus suddenly felt that she could not see through this mere prince whose strength was only at the soldier level. She took a deep breath and nodded. We can arrive at night. At night. Shinrui revealed a meaningful smile. The time is just right. Chapter 10:13. As night fell, the crescent moon appeared in the sky. Yerodisha, the palace hall. According to Phaedrus's previous report, Arthur should have arrived by now. Rex the Great looked at the captain of the Imperial Guards, Ars. Why haven't I seen him yet? General Phaedrus has gone to the Dragon Cavalry Regiment, Ars replied. His Royal Highness has indeed entered the palace. But he went to the UN Palace. The UN Palace? Rex the Great frowned and showed a strange expression. Not to mention Rex the Great, even Ars himself found it unbelievable. According to the information that Phaedrus sent in advance, Prince Arthur ordered Samuel to kill Trinidad, the supreme commander of the imperial garrison in Jinyao territory. Although Trinidad was killed by the elder of Ryuzaku, Stanwell, and Samuel and Trinidad had a fair duel, the real route of the whole incident was very clear. Prince Arthur took the opportunity to send some kind of signal to the imperial capital. The nature of this incident was unusual. Now Prince Arthur followed Phaedrus into the imperial capital alone to explain and answer to Rex the Great. However, the third prince did not come to see Rex the Great directly. Instead, he ignored His Majesty Rex and went to the UN Palace to see his old lover. A certain old lover had a special status, that was, the official wife of the third prince's uncle. Your Majesty, Wurst asked tentatively. After His Highness entered the Purple Yuan Palace, he seemed to have activated some kind of shielding device. Outsiders can't sense what's happening inside. Do you want me to take some people to the Purple Yuan Palace? No! Rex the Great immediately shook his head. Don't go near the Yuan Palace. I want to see what he can do. Yes. Ars was puzzled, but he did not ask further. He immediately bowed and retreated. In the Ziyuan Palace, the soft moonlight dragged the two shadows in the garden very long. Veronica flicked her golden brown hair and filled his cup. This is the tea I made according to your method. What do you think? It tastes good. Shinrei thought about it and said with a smile. But to be honest, compared to Inni, there is inevitably a gap. Teacher still needs to work hard. Not only is Inni beautiful and smart, but she's also very clever. How can teacher compare to her? Veronica shook her head, revealing a sorrowful expression. It's a pity that Rala didn't die. She was just seriously injured and went to a place to recuperate. Shinrei said mysteriously. This is a secret. Teacher, please keep it a secret. That's good. Veronica breathed a sigh of relief. No wonder you look so relaxed. Don't worry, I'm not a talkative person. But the danger I encountered this time was real. I almost lost my life. Shinrei shrugged. Teacher, won't you comfort me? Veronica looked at him and suddenly sighed. I don't know how to comfort you. Perhaps the person who should be comforted the most is Princess Rambus. I remember that when she was in the academy, she was a very simple and lovely girl. Why did you hurt her like this? It's not that I want to hurt her. This is her own request. Shinrei pointed to his heart. I just happened to be there. I used this opportunity to say to everyone what little Arthur has always wanted to say at the wedding. You mean Rambus herself? Veronica was taken aback. Intentionally or unintentionally, she ignored the latter part of his words. People change. Shinrei met her gaze. Just like you and me. Veronica's blue eyes were covered with a faint mist. Yes, we have all changed. The environment, especially time, can change people. However, no matter how the environment changes, some things should not be changed. What do you think, teacher? I don't know. Veronica gently looked away. I only know that some things, once changed, can't go back. First of all, we should determine whether it has really changed. Shinrei finished the tea in the cup, but Veronica didn't pour him another cup. She put down the teapot. Why did you come to see me so late today? I suddenly wanted to see teacher, so I came. I'll go see His Majesty later. See His Majesty on the way? Veronica gently covered her veil and said with a smile, So you want to see His Majesty, so you came to see me on the way. Hurry to the hall. It's getting late. Don't let His Majesty wait for too long. Teacher, you're wrong. I came to see you on purpose. As for His Majesty, it's really just on the way. Shinrei's tone was very sincere. Moreover, after this time, I don't know if I can see teacher again. Veronica was slightly shocked. Why do you say so? That great emperor became more and more wary of me. He kept using various means to restrict me. This time, I couldn't bear it anymore. I removed a chess piece he set in Jinyao territory, which was equivalent to giving him a reason to make a fuss. If I'm unlucky, I may never see teacher again. How could he do this? Veronica said with a trembling voice. No matter what, you are father and son after all, and you were once his most beloved son, so what if he's the most beloved son? For the sake of that throne, for the sake of power, brothers would kill each other, father and son would turn against each other. There are too many examples in history. Unfortunately. Shinrei looked a little sad, not for Shinrei, but for Arthur. Unfortunately, His Majesty doesn't know what little Arthur wants. Veronica sighed softly. Although you've changed a lot, I can see that you don't care about what His Majesty is obsessed with. Shinrei raised his eyebrows slightly. Teacher, you know what I want? Maybe it's just this cup of tea, a quiet yard, and a person who can put down all the masks and burdens to talk. Veronica's blue eyes showed a touch of gentleness. Just like little Arthur in the past, it seems that there are a lot of things about me that haven't changed, Shinrei said with a pun. Whether it's little Arthur or Arthur, they always have something in common. Some coincidences, or maybe it's not just a coincidence. In short, I'm very happy to have such a cup of tea, a quiet yard, and a... Okay, little Arthur. Veronica interrupted what he was about to say. Open your heart and have a good talk with His Majesty. After all, he is your father who dotes on you the most. As long as he understands your ambition, he won't make things difficult for you. No, it's not time yet. Shinrei looked deeply at Veronica. Teacher, since you want me to open my heart, why do you lock the door tightly in your heart? You really should go. Veronica avoided this question, and seemed to have made up her mind. This is the last time we meet. I won't see you again. Don't come to me again. We, after all, are people from two different worlds. At this time, in another place, or rather, another world. Mi's kingdom's royal mausoleum, the underground world. This was a sacrificial altar. Although it was only 3 stories tall, it had a majestic aura. However, it gave off an awe-inspiring and horrifying feeling, because it was surrounded by towers and paths of corpses that were built from the accumulation of corpses. It was unknown how many lives had been sacrificed to complete this building that could be called a miracle, and could also be called a hell on earth at the same time. On the altar, there were 2 mysterious people wearing crimson cloaks and masks. They were Kirks and Rothus. These 2 names were definitely fake, but their attire undoubtedly represented their identities, the Black Death Apostles bishops. Other than the 2 archbishops, there were also several area archbishops and the main people in charge, as well as the church's strongest military representative, the Messenger of Destruction. The highest level of the Messenger of Destruction was the Great Messenger of Destruction. There were only 2 of them, and their strength was at the level of a demigod. There were 6 normal Messengers of Destruction, and the lowest one was at the beginner level of the kingdom. Among them was the so-called strongest Messenger of Destruction, Shura. This was the main ritual that happened once every 100 years. Other than the Pope, who was only heard of but never seen, almost all the elites of the mysterious church were gathered here. Compared to the Golden Radiance underground palaces, fear, main altar, this, hatred, main altar was already quite complete. From its appearance, it seemed to have a long history. Those who participated in the main ritual were the core Black Death Apostles. These people had to go through layers of checks and the most reliable faith verification before entering. Those who did not have the true faith of the Messenger of Destruction would not be able to pass. Due to the lesson learned from the destruction of the Golden Radiance underground palaces, fear, main altar, the defense of the originally stronger, hatred main altar was once again strengthened. The outer layer was formed by the powerful psychic power of countless resentful spirits. With these elite messengers of destruction, in addition to the bone tower forest that could accept the faith of hatred, from all over the world, and the power of the main altar itself, even a demigod master would find it difficult to break through the defense and force his way in. However, it was more often than not that sturdy fortresses would be destroyed from the inside. The so-called test of faith wasn't completely foolproof. For an Azura who was destruction, to begin with, he only needed to use his instinctive will to easily pass the test of destruction faith. This was especially true for his incredibly pure aura of destruction. He was viewed as one of the most likely candidates to receive the ruler's favor during this God's Descent ritual. The ritual began. Countless amounts of blood and the refined essence of life were thrown into the altar. After a series of complicated rituals, all the bone towers shone with a strong destruction aura. Countless amounts of blood-red mist surrounded the towers, and waves of special origin power mixed with faith surged toward the main altar in the center. About half an hour later, the blood-red color of the bone tower forest gradually thinned, and the entire dark red main altar turned bright red. The space in the center of the altar began to distort, and a vortex-like entrance appeared, emitting a blood-red light. The essence that was thrown into the altar condensed into a blood-red pearl under the effect of the blood-red light, faintly emitting black lightning. Shura, who was guarding the altar, saw this blood pearl, and his eyes suddenly shone with a strange light. A familiar name rose in his mind. The blood pearl! Kirks looked pleasantly surprised, and exchanged glances with Rothus. It seemed that the power of the ruler's descent this time was far greater than before. Just the influence of the aura before the descent had condensed into a powerful treasure that originally required countless lives to be sacrificed, which was equivalent to a divine weapon. The blood aura in the bone tower forest became dimmer, and the power of the essence was concentrated on the main altar. His own power began to decrease greatly. The main altar began to tremble, and the blood-red vortex in the center turned into a pillar of light, rising to the top of the underground world. The blood-red light carried a strong destruction aura as it spread out. The nearby Black Death Apostles could clearly feel the power of that god, and all revealed fanatical gazes. Longhuang Empire Palace, Purple Garden Palace. Veronica seemed to have sensed something, and her body trembled. "Teacher, what's wrong?" Chen Rui asked with concern. "I'm fine." Veronica's voice had a hint of anxiety. You should go far away from here, leave the Dragon Emperor Empire. All right. Veronica. Shinrui did not call her teacher this time, and stood up. Let me bring you along. Let's leave this place together, go to a new place, and start a new life. No matter what identity you want, sister, teacher, or something else. If you're tired of my company, you can also choose to be absolutely free. This is little Arthur's last and biggest wish. Looking at those sincere eyes, Veronica's hands began to tremble slightly, as if she was desperately trying to suppress something. Chapter 10:14. It's not worth it. Veronica shook her head. It's really not worth it. You don't even know, Veronica, I know that you've experienced a lot of pain and suffering. Shinrui walked to Veronica and held her hand. Back then, little Arthur didn't have the ability to free you from pain, but now I do. No. Veronica lowered her head, and her hands trembled even more. You don't know. You don't know anything. Shinrui sighed softly. You're wrong. Actually, I know. No. Veronica clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles had turned white because of the force. Suddenly, she raised her head as if she had made up her mind and struggled to break free from his hand. She screamed. Do you know who caused you to wander outside for 7 years? Why did you lose most of your memory? Shinrui stared deeply into her eyes. That was just an accident. No matter what the reason is, little Arthur will not blame you. Veronica's face changed. You really know? If the loss of memory is regarded as death, then he is already dead. I'm just a person who recreates memories, or a person who comes back to life and has part of the original little Arthur consciousness. Shinrui told the biggest truth for the first time since he was reborn in this world. Although it was just a pun, he pointed to his head. However, in this part of memory, his greatest obsession has always been there. No matter what happened in the past, you will always be the person in little Arthur's heart. You cannot like him, you cannot love him, and you can even hurt him. However, you can't stop his heart that wants to make you happy. Even if it's just watching your happiness from afar. Veronica was stunned. A drop of tear slipped down from the corner of her eye and quickly melted into the veil. Come with me, Veronica. Leave this place. Leave behind all the pain and hatred, choose your own life again, and truly choose freely. At the same time, under the royal tomb of the Mia's kingdom, the blood-red light pillar on the main altar was getting brighter and brighter. The entire underground world was illuminated by the light pillar. All the corpses on the bone tower seemed to have come alive. They were making weird noises as if they were moaning and wailing. Then, countless red mists that looked like resentful souls rushed toward the light pillar. The blood-red mist around the bone tower had been completely absorbed by the light pillar. The jagged bones had gradually turned grayish-white, as if they had transferred all the power they had accumulated over the years to the main altar. The pillar of light condensed into a huge blood-red phantom that floated above the main altar. All the Black Death followers knelt down piously, opened their hands, pointed to the sky, and recited the eulogy loudly. Shura was among them, and there was a mysterious smile on his face behind the mask. Yerodisha, Ziyuan Palace. Veronica's tears only lasted for a moment, and her eyes had already changed into indifference. Very touching lines, little Arthur or Arthur. She stretched out her hand to the veil on her face and slowly pulled it down. Unfortunately, there are too many things you don't understand. For example, my appearance. From the day Shinrui saw Veronica, she had been wearing a special veil. Except for her eyes, he couldn't see the rest of her facial features. Now, she finally took off the veil. Originally, it should be the white, flawless, and beautiful face in his memory, but it had become a terrifying face. Her face was covered with rune-like marks. The lines of the marks seemed to be alive as they slowly twisted and looked extremely ferocious. The lines spread from the face to the part below the neck that was covered by the clothes. It could be imagined that the rest of the body should also have such terrifying lines. Shinrui carefully observed those textures. He could clearly feel the rich vitality and strange breath contained in them. This kind of existence was a bit similar to a parasitic organism like a cocoon. It parasitized on the organism and absorbed the strength and nutrients of the body until the organism died. Veronica was also a soul transformation, but the feeling she gave to Chinrui was completely different from the dwarf Wang Yinka and others he had seen before. Her body exuded an aura that really required one to look up and shudder. From the inside out, she seemed to be a clone of the Abyss Master. Her aura was by no means comparable to the ordinary kingdom-level powerhouse. Solange once said that very few people could get the recognition of the gods and be granted the heart of the Master. Their strength and potential would increase greatly. At the critical moment, they could summon the will of the gods and fuse with the power of the gods to exert incredible power. The heart of hatred. It must be because of this reason. Veronica saw that Chinrui was in a daze, as if he was scared. She smiled coldly and raised her hand. The smooth white hand began to rapidly change into a terrifying claw. The claw was a foot long and sharp like a blade, glowing red under the moonlight. A cold, murderous aura rippled out, and the surrounding flowers and trees withered. The hideous face showed a creepy smile, and the claw slowly reached out to Chinrui. "I look like this. Do you still want to pull me out of the abyss?" To Veronica's surprise, Arthur did not show the fear she expected. Instead, he took a few steps forward and asked calmly, "What are you afraid of?" Veronica was shocked and suddenly froze in midair. "Your eyes are full of a terrifying aura." Chinrui looked straight into the pair of blue eyes. "But behind that there is fear. You are afraid. You are afraid of my approach. You are afraid that I will touch your heart that is wrapped in hatred and destruction. You are afraid that you will not be able to suppress some kind of will to hurt me." Chinrui wiped the heat on his cheeks. "Do you see? This is the sadness that belongs to little Arthur. Because he saw the person he loved struggling in the endless hell. He could only look up at the sun in the sky that can be said to be an extravagant hope. He is crying." Veronica's eyes, which were full of destruction, trembled. Her eyes had long been filled with mist. Although she tried to control it, she still could not hold back the tears that burst out of her eyes. "You once asked me if you had fallen into the abyss where the sun could not be seen. My answer is that I will use these hands to pull you out. Believe me." Chinrui reached out his hand again. "Now give me your hand." Veronica looked at the hand, and her breathing became a little rapid. She looked at her hand that should be called a claw, and hesitated. In the end, she reached out to Chinrui's hand. Suddenly, her body shook, and a painful expression appeared on her face. She quickly retracted her claw and grabbed her shoulder tightly. "Little Arthur! Get out of here!" Chinrui was shocked. "Veronica! Don't come over!" Veronica's body trembled. A powerful force field repelled Chinrui's body, and his body was involuntarily pushed dozens of meters away. "Kill! Kill! Kill!" Her voice turned into a deep roar. Terrifying flames burned all over her body. Her eyes shot out a light that made people tremble. The entire Purple Yuan Palace was filled with a suffocating aura. The ground cracked, and between the cracks, there was a blazing red that was like lava. Such strong feelings of hatred. He had only felt it when he was at the Tree of Nature in the Silver Moon's celestial capital. Chinrui instinctively felt the danger. While he was vigilant, his eyes suddenly froze. He saw Veronica's terrible claw penetrate her own heart. It was not an ordinary penetration, but the biggest blow that contained all the destructive power. Even the blood blade that protruded from her back was emitting fog, and the blood was quickly evaporating. Her body slowly collapsed. In her deep blue eyes, hatred and destruction quickly dimmed. Even the flames and all the vitality on her body seemed to want to look at him more, but in the end, she closed her eyes weakly. At this moment, the image in Chinrui's eyes lost all its brilliance. Everything turned black and white, and it stopped at the scene of the weak body being penetrated by the sharp blade. A feeling of pain came from the heart and spleen. This blow was more painful than directly penetrating his heart. It was not only the pain that belonged to little Arthur, but also his own anger and sadness. Above the main altar under the Mia's kingdom's imperial tomb, a huge phantasm slowly opened its eyes, looking down at the worshipping Black Death followers. Above the main altar under the Mia's kingdom's imperial tomb, the huge phantasm looked at the Black Death followers below and began to make a sound. This sound was a strange language. Through the vibration of the bone tower's power in all directions, it converged into a language that everyone could understand and echoed throughout the underground world. Human nature is evil, and hatred is the root of all evil. Those who believe in destruction can live forever in destruction, subvert everything, then recreate a world that can be destroyed and destroyed at will. The Black Death followers chanted loudly in unison. The voice of the phantasm not only had a strong penetrating and infectious power, but it also revealed an incredible strange power. Wisps of blood-red mist seemed to fly away, shuttling back and forth among the Black Death followers. Wherever it passed, the Black Death followers lit up with a little red light. Feeling a special energy in their bodies, they knew that it was the power bestowed by God's grace. They were overjoyed, and their chanting voice became louder. In the palace, Chinray suppressed the strong emotions in his heart. Just as he was about to step forward, Veronica's body suddenly floated up. Her closed eyes slowly opened. There was no sadness or anger. There wasn't even any agitated emotions. There was only cold calmness. The sharp claws were slowly pulled out from the body, and the dried blood stains were dyed again. However, her expression didn't change at all, as if this body was not hers. Foolish life! Foolish persistence! Although this voice belonged to Veronica, it gave Chinray another familiar feeling. You actually surpassed the will that I gave you and also surpassed life and death in an instant. However, this kind of persistent consciousness is exactly what I need. The cold eyes fell on Chinray. Ignorant ant, you are the only crack in her heart, right? Did you even forget to show your fear? As long as you are completely annihilated, this descending body can reach perfection. The eyes flashed, and a terrifying coercion swept toward Chinray overwhelmingly. The ground along the way cracked without any mercy or hesitation. If it was an ordinary powerhouse, he would have been annihilated under this power. However, when the crack reached Chinray, it stopped. A look of surprise flashed across the cold blue eyes, then she snorted coldly. The suffocating breath in the air suddenly became 100 times thicker. The space around Chinray began to distort, and a crack in the void appeared. The degree of distortion of this crack quickly multiplied and swallowed his entire body. A contemptuous smile appeared on the face of the blue eyes. Although this was a kingdom-level powerhouse, he was just an ant. For her, who had already descended with an avatar, she could make this almost perfect descending body erupt with power that was far beyond her own level. In other words, it was called power. At this moment, a familiar red starlight appeared in the vision of the blue eyes. The starlight spread in an instant, and the pupils of the blue eyes suddenly shrank. The crack in the space quickly closed in the shadow of the stars. The bright starlight filled the entire space of the Zun Palace, and the destructive breath seemed to be solidified by the starlight. In the dazzling crimson starlight, the figure in crystal armor became clear. Behind her were 2 pairs of graceful and luxurious wings. At the same time, a familiar voice rang in his ears. Jacqueline! Get out of her body! It's you! The blue eyes roared, and there was hatred and anger in her voice. Chapter 10-15. In the resource palace, the ground cracked, and countless blood-colored lights spurted out, clashing with the revolving stars. The 2 shocking forces were locked in a stalemate, and it was hard to tell which one was stronger. Quiriana's pupils had turned from blue to blood-red. Her sharp claws slashed out a sharp flame, tearing apart the ripple-like waves in the stars. However, after tearing apart the ripples, the flame was already at the end of its flight. It was swept away by the sharp aura of the aura blade, and instantly turned into nothingness. The aura blade's momentum did not decrease, and it pressed towards Quiriana's head. Quiriana blocked it with her sharp claws, and sparks flew everywhere. There was a sound of metal clashing, and a shallow mark was left on her nails. Quiryana's arm emitted a fiery flame, and countless intertwined lights appeared around Chenrei's body. From afar, it looked like a huge claw formed by countless fine blades, holding him in the middle. Chenrei dodged quickly. In this space where terrifying forces intertwined, if he were to use large-scale teleportation, it would be equivalent to his neck colliding with the blades. He could only rely on regular movements to dodge. He was slightly slower by half a beat, and a few bloody marks appeared on his face. That kind of sharp claws did not need to touch the body. Just the terrifying sharpness that it emitted in the air could cut through everything. Quiryana's battle style was on the path of sharpness. Her attacks were rather concentrated, and she used points and lines to break through. It was similar to the Aura Blade's attack, but sharper and more varied. Logically speaking, Chenrei could even kill a demigod after performing the ultimate Crimson Star transformation. However, when facing Quiryana, whose strength had just surpassed the demigod level, he actually felt like he was being suppressed in every aspect. This was because Quiryana's true strength had long surpassed that of an ordinary fake god. Her killing technique was sharp and unpredictable, making it hard for one to defend against it. Her understanding and usage of the laws were far from what Chenrei could achieve. Even when performed in this body, it was faintly approaching the true power. It was just like a peerless master. Even if he limited his cultivation to the same level as an ordinary master, he would still not be a match for an ordinary master. The huge claws closed, and the countless interweaving blades overlapped in the blink of an eye, intending to slice Chenrei into powder. Chenrei could no longer dodge. The two pairs of starlight wings on his back folded and wrapped around his body. The instant the light from the flames and the starlight collided, the entire space trembled violently. A sharp sound that pierced through one's soul rang out. Countless sparks flashed, and quite a few pieces of the star wings flew out in all directions. It was easy to imagine just how much pressure they were under. At this time, Quiryana's movements suddenly stopped, and the speed of those blades suddenly decreased. Their power was also greatly reduced. Her face showed a painful expression, as if she was struggling with her life. This was not the first time something like this had happened. Every time Chenrei was in danger, Quiryana's power would mysteriously stagnate. Although she was being suppressed by Quiryana's overwhelming power, Veronica had been burning her soul to fight with all her might. All for the last ray of sunshine in her heart. Even if she was already in a state of eternal damnation. Making use of this opportunity, in the sky where the sparks interweaved, a cup that emitted a milky white glow appeared. It then turned into a trickle and seeped into the ground. The Holy Grail's holy protection. The holy protection could increase one's luck for a short period of time. This type of luck could reduce physical and magical damage taken by the person who was blessed. The duration of various negative statuses would be greatly reduced, and the duration of beneficial statuses would be increased. Under the enhancement of the holy protection, the starlight suddenly brightened. The 4 pairs of star wings spread out, and the countless interweaved sharp lights were all repelled. They shot back towards Quiryana, the damage reflected by the protection of star wings. Quiryana was caught off guard and was hit by her own killer move. Instantly, blood splattered everywhere. Countless terrifying crisscrossed wounds appeared on the surface of her entire body, and even her skin and flesh were torn apart. Stupid and lowly existence, how dare you resist the greatest will of the ruler? Quiryana let out a cold laugh. Don't think that you can stop me by burning your soul. Today, even if I have to sacrifice this rare highest soul variant, I will completely annihilate that detestable fellow. After saying that, the flames around Quiryana burned even more fiercely. All of her clothes were burned to nothing, revealing her naked body. As expected, the body that should have been perfect and alluring was covered with terrifying and strange patterns. Those patterns began to twist and expand rapidly, completely wrapping the body that belonged to the human, like an armor. The nails that were as sharp as a knife also doubled in length, revealing a cold sharpness. After this mutation, Veronica's will was completely suppressed. Quiriana groaned, and the entire bloody kingdom was blazing. It even overshadowed the brilliance of the stars. Chunrei felt that the pressure suddenly doubled. What was even more terrifying was that Quiriana's power was still gradually increasing, as if she was continuously transferring the power of her body to this soul variant through some kind of overdraft secret technique. If it was another demigod with strength, he would have already collapsed under this terrifying power. However, Chunrei had the super system and various means. Although he was suppressed, he could always compete with Quiriana. Quiriana was not surprised by this. She had already experienced the extraordinariness of this enemy during the battle at the Silver Moon Immortal Capital's Tree of Nature. He might even have a divine kingdom. Therefore, this time, Quiriana did not waste her energy to try to control or subdue Chunrei. Instead, she used the most direct method, destruction. Due to the power of sacrifice at the main altar, the will that Veronica's soul variant received could be maximized. Quiriana was determined to eliminate Chunrei and did not hesitate to sacrifice this rare vessel. She also had full confidence that she could crush this troublesome enemy into pieces under the strongest soul variant state. Underground of the Mies Kingdom's Imperial Mausoleum, Hatred Main Altar. As the believers chanted loudly and the sacrifice continued, the huge shadow in the air became more and more solid. Shura, who had been chanting along with the crowd, also noticed that among the divine statues around the altar, other than the Crevice Demon, Violent Demon, Inferno Witch, Abyssal Lord, and other low-level abyss creatures, the originally blurry, divine statue, at the highest third level finally became clear. This should be something that could only be seen after receiving the Shadow's gift and becoming a core Black Death Apostle. In the middle was a creature with obvious female characteristics. She had bulging breasts, a slender figure, a tail behind her, long nails that were as sharp as knives on her hands, and the bone spurs and protrusions on her body were more like an armor. A strong feeling of hatred automatically surged in Shura's heart. This image was faintly consistent with the shadow in the air. Chunrei had also seen it in the Silver Moon Immortal Capital's Tree of Nature. It was the Lord of Hatred, Quiriana. Beside Hatred were two statues of male creatures. One was strong and had 6 arms. It was Fear. The other was huge and looked like a scorpion. It was Despair. The 3 Abyss Lords. The Lord of Hatred, Quiriana, the Lord of Fear, Sasbak, and the Lord of Despair, whose name was unknown. What was certain was that, like the other 2 Abyss Lords, there was also a main altar for Despair, just that its exact location was unknown. The blood-red mist floated around the Black Death Apostles, constantly emitting energy that seeped into the Black Death Apostles' bodies. In reality, these were just the impurities emitted by the huge shadow when it absorbed and purified the power of the blood sacrifice. Even so, it was enough for these fanatics to obtain corresponding power. The blood-red mist danced for a while, then gradually slowed down and actually gathered around Shura. This scene caused the rest of the Black Death Apostles to reveal looks of envy. Even the 2 patriarchs were no exception. This meant that the Shura would become the most favored person in this God's descent, and would receive great benefits from the God's descent. You have a shocking destructive faith that surpasses everyone else. I will grant you the strongest soul transformation power and the heart of domination. Quiriana's shadow let out a distant voice that reverberated above the main altar. At the same time, there was an unquestionable ruling in the voice. Everyone felt that it was a matter of course, and no one had any objections. Especially Solange. She secretly calculated in her heart that she did not expect Shura to be so valued by the god and become the highest favored. Then, his value would greatly increase, and it was extremely likely that he would enter the highest level of the mysterious church in the future. Therefore, she must use her current physical relationship to further win him over, and let him truly become the pillar of the Cloud Empire faction. Next, she only needed to offer a bit of her soul, and Shura would become the strongest soul transformation power, and obtain the heart of hatred. Shura took a few steps forward, and the surrounding blood-red mist slowly enveloped him. At this moment, The hate ruler's shadow's voice suddenly changed. You don't have a soul! As soon as this sentence came out, all the Black Death apostles revealed looks of shock. How could a person not have a soul? Who are you? The shadow's voice had a special kind of deterrence. Shura's mask instantly shattered into pieces. Not only the mask, but his entire face and body also cracked from this shout. However, no blood flowed out from those cracks. Shura raised his head and looked at the shadow in the air, revealing a strange smile. When he smiled, the skin on his face split open, looking very scary. Bitch, in another place, aren't you fighting with me? The meaning of these words was quite clear. The Black Death apostles were agitated. The Shura they had high hopes for was actually a spy who had snuck in. Damn it! Quiriana finally understood. She did not expect that the enemy's clone to have snuck into the main altar. A sharp light flashed in her eyes, and power was emitted. Shura's body split into pieces without any suspense. However, in the center of the split body floated a strange round object. This was a white polyhedron, engraved with ancient runes. 6 different colors of light faintly appeared around it. This thing gave Quiriana an extremely dangerous feeling. This was a pseudo-god-level killing weapon personally created by the Supreme Angel Raphael, brilliant lightning of light. Not only that, Shinrui also used the 6 elemental source power and added the cosmic annihilation, personally taught by the elemental king on it. It could multiply the power of the brilliant lightning of light to an unimaginable level. Quiriana's eyes narrowed. She saw the 6 colors of light enter the white polyhedron, and in the next second, everything turned into a blazing white light. Chapter 10:16. The white light was so dazzling, and an indescribable power instantly lit up the underground world. Shura had been waiting for the best opportunity. When Quiriana was about to use God's gift, and the Bone Tower's defense was at its lowest, he finally revealed his final fangs. Quiriana's angry attack to kill Shura was equivalent to giving a boost to the already activated nuclear bomb. If Quiriana's real body was here, no matter how powerful, brilliant lightning, and cosmic annihilation were, they wouldn't be able to cause too much damage. However, what appeared on the main altar was only a projection of her. Originally, the Bone Tower that gathered a strong power of faith and blood sacrifice could bear and share the damage suffered by the main altar. However, because Quiriana was summoned during the main sacrificial ceremony, all the power of the Bone Tower was sucked dry by the main altar. Although layers of protection had been set up outside the underground world, the internal area of the main altar was at its weakest, and it couldn't withstand this terrifying destructive power at all. In fact, this strengthened version of brilliant lightning was originally prepared by Shinrui for the trip to Holy Mountain of Light, and it was very likely that he would repay it to Raphael. However, he went to Holy Mountain of Light for Tiffany and the source of creation. After all, it was a personal gain and loss, and the descent of the abyss was a disaster for all living beings. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, he finally gave this big gift to Quiriana. Wherever the bright white light went, everything, including the Black Death apostles, the forest of ancient towers, the corpse road, instantly turned into particles and disappeared without a trace. Quiriana's clone only lasted for a few seconds before it couldn't withstand the terrifying power anymore. In a shrill scream, it turned into nothingness along with the main altar. The entire Mies kingdom was shaking, and the ground was cracking. The surrounding seawater was also affected by this terrifying power, and a tsunami-like tide appeared. The citizens who didn't know what was going on thought that there was some kind of strong earthquake, and they all ran out of their houses in fear. After half a day, the earthquake finally subsided. The area where the Imperial Mausoleum was located had completely collapsed. If it wasn't for the powerful protection set up around the main altar to prevent invasion, the power of this explosion was enough to sink the entire island country into the sea. The moment the main altar was reduced to ashes, Quiriana of the Purple Garden Palace trembled. Her power abruptly stopped. She covered her head and screamed in pain. Damn it! Even if you destroy the main altar, the will of the abyss won't be destroyed. It won't be long before we meet again. At that time. Her words came to an abrupt halt before she finished her sentence. The appalling redness in her blue eyes gradually faded. The hideous armor and the sharp fingernails disappeared at a visible speed, and the naked body of a woman was restored. On her perfect body, the originally hideous and terrifying veins no longer existed, but she seemed to have lost all her strength. She swayed and fell forward. Chenrui's figure flashed, and he caught Veronica and slowly sat down. Veronica's ocean blue eyes looked extremely tired, but there was an unprecedented peace in them. You did it, little Arthur. No, I should call you Arthur. You used your hands to pull me out of the abyss of despair. Veronica's beauty was comparable to Catherine and Ralla's, and her mature and perfect naked body was full of temptation. However, there wasn't the slightest reverie in Chenrui's eyes at this moment, only a faint sorrow. Whether it was the heart of transcending hatred or the battle with Quiriana, he had to pay the price of burning his soul. Moreover, in order to kill Chenrui, Quiriana had overdrawn all the power of this soul variant. Now Veronica's body and soul were exhausted. Even the resurrection potion couldn't work. Veronica raised her hand and slowly stroked his face. Little Arthur, you have grown up. Take good care of yourself and the people around you in the future. My heart will always be by your side to accompany you. Chenrui smiled slightly. His tears fell down and fell on Veronica's face. In his consciousness, a strong sadness surged into his heart. In a daze, he couldn't tell whether this was the original Arthur or his. I'm sorry, I'm not the original Arthur. Your tears are as warm as the sun. Veronica looked at the sky. Although there was only moonlight, she seemed to see the sun. I finally don't have to hope anymore because I'm already bathed in the sun. Her figure gradually became thin, but her beautiful smile was still calm. Suddenly, she raised her head and kissed Chenrui's lips. Chenrui trembled slightly. Before he could feel that touch of gentleness, the body in his arms had already become light and dissipated into countless light spots, like butterflies waving their wings to say goodbye. He raised his head and looked at the light spots that were gradually dissipating in the air. He gently reached out his hand, and the light spots lingered in his hand for a moment before they began to disappear. In the air, a silver-white object appeared, emitting a soft white light. All the light spots were quickly absorbed into it. Holy Grail. In addition to the Holy Protection spell that assisted in battle, the Holy Grail also had another function, which was Holy Spirit. Originally, Chenrui's plan was to use the skill, Holy Spirit, to stabilize the biggest threat, Ben Hong. He didn't expect that it would become the last hope to save Veronica. Holy Spirit could absorb the damaged soul body into the Holy Grail to nourish it until it recovered. The effect of Holy Spirit could be strengthened by sacrificing some kind of power of light. However, Holy Spirit was not omnipotent. The degree and time of recovery depended on the degree of damage to the soul body. Veronica's soul had almost completely collapsed, which was completely different from Ben Hong's damage. He didn't know if it could be recovered or when it could be recovered. Chenrui closed his eyes and felt the warmth that seemed to still exist around him. His entire spiritual power was also undergoing some special changes. The original subconsciousness of Arthur, in the depths of his heart, gradually dissipated and integrated into his soul. His soul power also continued to grow in the process of refinement. After a long time, he finally opened his eyes and strode out. Before Chenrui entered Ziyuan Palace, he had already used the prepared props to set up the strongest ancient runes formation around, shielding the movement and power of Ziyuan Palace. Although the battle just now was very fierce, no sound could be heard from outside. This formation was a combination of a huge amount of power of faith and Chenrui's body. If he was defeated by Quiriana, then the formation would also collapse. When Chenrui left, he didn't directly close the formation. Instead, he activated a certain rune function. After a certain period of time, it would gradually disappear, revealing the true appearance of Ziyuan Palace that had been razed to the ground. Shinrei didn't stop along the way and went straight to the palace hall. This time he came to Yarodisha, nominally to meet his father. Unsurprisingly, although it was already late at night, Rex the Great was still waiting for him in the hall. No one stopped him along the way. "Thank you for waiting, Your Majesty." Shinrei came to the steps under the throne, stood still, and saluted. "You also know that I waited for a long time?" Rex the Great snorted coldly. "You're having a good time in the Yuan Palace." Hearing the word comfortable, Shinrei shrugged speechlessly and didn't explain. "You and your dead Uncle Sophistry's wife." Rex the Great deliberately used this more taboo title. Shinrei shook his head and said, "In this world, there is no Sophistry's wife. You've made up your mind to take her away at all costs." "No, I haven't finished my words. In this world, not only is there no Sophistry's wife, but there is also no Veronica. There is no more." Rex the Great understood the meaning of this sentence, and a moved expression appeared on his face. It was as if he was meeting this son in front of him for the first time. "I've really underestimated you, Arthur. You can actually be so heartless. I have to admit that you already possess the most important qualities that an emperor should have." "The most important quality is being cruel and merciless?" Shinrei said indifferently. "All the obstacles in front of that road, everyone, will be eradicated without hesitation." "Is that so, Your Majesty?" Rex the Great narrowed his eyes slightly. "Are you asking the obvious? Is that so?" Shinrei showed an indifferent expression. "It seems that I asked a stupid question." "That's not the question you're stupid about, but—" A piece of paper appeared in Rex the Great's hand, which was given to him by Shinrei back then. "I still don't understand. This is unbelievably stupid. Isn't His Majesty doing this? Or maybe he's still guarding against it, fearing that this is a trap." Shinrei smiled. "Don't tell me that His Majesty has never thought of this. Even if I didn't take the initiative to bring it up, it would only be a matter of time." It turned out that the content of that piece of paper was the real reason why the Jinyao territory had been excluded, suppressed, and even threatened during this period of time. The one who pushed all of this was actually Arthur himself. "Are you willing to give up all of this? Or are you ready to give up all of your efforts a long time ago?" Rex the Great shook his head. "Just for the holy light robe? That thing is just a symbol. Even if it has a special meaning to the Church of Light, it won't bring you any real benefits. You obviously have the support of the Church, and you've shown such ability, and even that resolute will and means. Even if you overthrow me now, it's not impossible for you to sit on the throne. Why did you make such a decision? Shouldn't His Majesty be happy? Today I even came to the door, indirectly killed the commander of the garrison in the capital, and had an affair with the so-called uncle's widow. Isn't this the best opportunity for His Majesty?" Shinrei looked around the quiet hall. "But do you really know what I want, Your Majesty?" "I don't know." Rex's fingers slowly tapped the armrest of the throne. "I only know that you shouldn't have come alone today." Chapter 10:17. Shinrei just had a faint smile on his face. "Murdering the commander of the capital garrison, adultery, and killing my uncle's widow. Are these not enough? Then, how about adding murdering the emperor?" The last sentence made Rex the Great's eyes become sharp, and he looked straight into Shinrei's eyes. However, there was nothing extra except indifference. "Your Majesty doesn't want to do this?" Shinrei looked straight into Rex the Great's eyes. "This is just right to push the boat with the current and get it done once and for all. Isn't this the most important quality of an emperor?" Rex the Great's breathing quickened a little. He took a deep breath, and gradually calmed down. "So, you're saying that you've already come to this realization when you came to see me alone without even bringing along your protectors? From the day I came to this palace. No, from the day Arthur was born in this palace, I should have such awareness." Shinrei shook his head lightly. "The most ruthless is the royal family. For power, for survival, the closer the relatives are, the more they will fight to the death. The tree wants peace, but the wind will not stop. It's impossible to be good to yourself. Even if it's your most beloved son, when one day he might shake your throne and become an obstacle on the road of power, you will not hesitate to eradicate him. Since this is the case, why did you come back? Why did you show such amazing abilities after coming back? Is it just for that woman? The woman that you have personally killed? All of your hard work is centered around this kind of ridiculous and ultimately ending up like this love affair? This is my own business. I don't want to answer too much. Chinrui did not answer directly but changed the topic. However, speaking of Veronica, since I have completely ended things with her, then shouldn't our agreement be fulfilled? Completely eliminate the remaining forces of the Cloud Empire? Even if you didn't mention it, I would have done it anyway. Rex the Great sneered. But I'm very curious. You're still concerned about this matter in such a situation. What exactly do you want? If there's anything I want to take with me, it's the holy light robe. Chinrui pointed at his head. But for Arthur, what he really wants isn't this. Because he's more naive and stupid than me. But it's meaningless to talk about this now. Your Majesty, the key now is not what I want, but what do you want? The Emperor on the throne fell silent. His index finger tapped on the armrest. In this silent hall, it seemed to be exceptionally loud. The atmosphere froze for a moment. After a long while, Rex seemed to make some sort of decision. With a wave of his hand, a space ring flew out and hovered in front of Chinrui. This is what you want to take away. Chinrui probed it with his consciousness. There was only one thing in the space ring. It was a white robe that was as thin as a cicada's wings, emitting a silvery white radiance. Just by touching it with his consciousness, he could feel the pure aura of light. It was not inferior to the level of the crown of thorns and the Holy Grail, the highest holy relic of the Longhorn Empire, which was also the last of the 3 holy relics, the Holy Light Robe. Chinrui was stunned. It was indeed a little unexpected that he could obtain the Holy Light Robe that he had always wanted so easily. That puzzled expression fell into Rex's eyes, and he inexplicably felt carefree. He said coldly, "What, this isn't what you want?" "Of course it is. I'm just a little surprised." Although surprised, Chinrui would definitely not reject this good thing that was delivered to his doorstep. He put the space ring into his storage. "So, Your Majesty, what should I do next as a prince? Didn't you plan it from the start?" Rex laughed coldly. "I can finally confirm that from the moment you returned, you did not intend to stay here at all. The Jinyo territory, the magic game, and the yellow dragon wine were just the bargaining chips that you paid." "Oh?" Chinrui raised his eyebrows. "Your Majesty, are you sure that there is no other conspiracy in this?" "Humph. Don't treat everyone except yourself as an idiot. Although I don't know what you want, I already know what you don't want." Rex looked deeply at Chinrui. "I don't know if I should heave a sigh of relief or sigh. I admit that I have wandered between the heir and the throne that I control. However, in history, no matter how great the Emperor was, there was no one who did not hesitate. Just as many people think, you are indeed the best successor to this empire. Why are you so dismissive of it? Everyone's pursuit is different. Of course, I have my own obsession, but the throne and power are not among them. Moreover, I am confident that I have the ability to transcend certain shackles and truly pursue what I want." Rex was silent for a moment. "What other wishes do you have?" "Wishes?" A smile appeared at the corner of Chinrui's mouth. "Fayer. Although she has not raised any objections, I can see that she is not willing to accept the political marriage that you have arranged. I hope that in the future, she can freely choose her marriage." "Ridiculous," Rex said scornfully. "Since she is a princess, she must be prepared to sacrifice her life for the Empire at any time, let alone a mere marriage. Only a weak country needs to sacrifice a woman's happiness to maintain a temporary stability. I don't think that the Longhorn Empire and you, the Emperor, need to do this if you really love Fayer as much as you seem on the surface." Rex did not answer, but suddenly asked, "Is the Holy Grail with you?" Chinrui looked into Rex's eyes and nodded slowly. I see. Rex nodded slowly, as if he had understood many things. The Rio Empire's rejection of the marriage is just a deal with Rambus. That is a deal that she chose herself. Just like what is happening between us now. If Your Majesty thinks that it is, yes. Shinrei stared at Rex for a moment, then shrugged. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave first. You plan to bid farewell like this? Rex did not use the word farewell, but farewell. Yes. Shinrei took a deep breath. I am ready. You have made your own choice, I cannot stop you. Rex was silent for a while. I will only say one thing, it is not too late for you to change your mind now. This is not a polite remark, you should be able to hear it. I think that Arthur has no regrets. No matter what he wants to do, he will always have a father who puts him in his heart. Shinrei bowed deeply to Rex, then turned around and left. Behind him, Rex's deep voice came. You have been trying to separate yourself from the Arthur who disappeared back then. But no matter what changes you have experienced, no matter what identity or ability you have, the blood that flows in your body will always be the blood of the Roland family. No matter what you want to do, you cannot deny this root. So, this is the way I must choose to bid farewell. Shinrei did not explain anything. He turned around and looked at the figure who stood up on the throne, and a feeling that he had not felt for a long time arose in his heart. In an instant, he seemed to have overlapped with a certain image in his memory. Then, farewell, father. At this moment, Shinrei felt that the last bit of Arthur consciousness had also dissipated, or rather, it had completely merged into his soul. There was no longer any difference between them, and there were no flaws or loopholes. The power of his soul had also become purer and more abundant than ever, both in quality and quantity. Just like before advancing to the ultimate Crimson Star transformation, this improvement was equivalent to laying a solid and stable foundation for advancing to the next realm. Next, all he needed was an opportunity to induce a qualitative change. This opportunity was to create the origin. Although Shinrei's last sentence was not loud, Rex still heard it. His body shook slightly, and he stared at the back of the lone figure, only to feel that his vision suddenly became a little blurry. After all, Rex was the emperor who controlled the entire empire. Previously, because he had always been afraid of the talent and prestige of Arthur, he could be said to be closely involved in the situation. However, now that he had jumped out of that frame, he could really see many things clearly. Arthur used his outstanding talent to manage the Jinyao territory into a huge profit, and then this profit was given to him in this way. Jinyao territory, magic games, yellow dragon wine. These were not bargaining chips, but gifts. A gift to his father. What Arthur was going to do next would definitely be extremely dangerous. Judging from the Holy Grail and Holy Light magic robe, it was very likely that it would also involve the Colossal Church of Light. Therefore, before that, he had to draw a line with the Long Huang Empire and his father. Therefore, at that time, Arthur had given him a piece of paper. What happened next was all planned on the paper, and this was also the best way for Arthur to say goodbye. Rex suddenly felt very grateful for the choice he had made in the end. Although Arthur was about to say goodbye and embark on a path that even he could not predict, no matter what, he did not lose this son. Do you see, Ikalina, our son? After a long time, his blurry vision gradually became clear, and his slightly hunched figure became straight again. He slowly sat on the throne. Ars! Imperial Guard Captain Ars, who had been on standby somewhere, immediately appeared in the hall. Your Majesty! Has Arthur left? Yes, Your Majesty. His Royal Highness has already left the palace, but the strange thing is that he seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Even Gus's sensing ability could not detect where His Royal Highness had gone. Rex the Great nodded without batting an eyelid. Immediately informed the whole city that the third Prince Arthur killed the late Prince Sophistry's widow, Veronica, and assassinated the commander of the Imperial garrison in the Jinyao territory, Trinidad. Now, he has absconded to escape punishment. Order the Firewing Legion to pursue him through the night. We must capture Arthur and bring him back to the Imperial capital. Order the Dragon Riders to move out and join forces with the Iron Scale in the Jinyao territory to take control of the entire Jinyao territory at once. Anyone who disobeys will be killed without mercy. Yes. Ours accepted the order without hesitation and left. Chapter 10:18. The next day, a shocking news spread. The third prince of the Longhong Empire, Arthur Roland, absconded for fear of punishment after committing a serious crime. He had been personally ordered by Rex the Great to be wanted. No one would have thought that the third prince of the empire, the Lord of Jinyao, and the top mechanic Grand Master of mankind, who was once in the limelight, would once again become a hot topic in the world in such an extremely eye-catching way after a series of marriage rejections and disappearances. The crimes committed by Arthur were also quickly well known. First of all, Arthur used tricks to set up a dual trap and encouraged his Golden Knight and Dragon Knight Samuel to kill Trinidad, who was also a Golden Knight and Dragon Knight. Trinidad also had the most special identity, which was the Legion commander of the capital garrison in the Jinyao territory personally appointed by Rex the Great. This conspiracy involved the struggle between Arthur and Rex the Great. Rex the Great's desire for control was well known. He ruled the Longhong Empire with absolute control for many years. Prince Arthur returned after 7 years of disappearance. In just a few months, the ability he showed amazed the whole world. He was recognized as the best heir to the throne. However, to Rex the Great, who was in the prime of his life, this also represented a potential threat. From ancient times to the present, the transfer of power between the new and the old was an extremely sensitive topic. It was full of unimaginable struggles and various unpredictable changes. Especially for an emperor, whether the heir was too good or too mediocre, it was a troublesome thing. In this case, Arthur began to be subjected to various restrictions and suppression, both overtly and covertly. This was already an open secret. Unfortunately, Arthur was obviously not the kind of person who was good at enduring. Finally, he couldn't bear Trinidad's provocation, so he used the duel to let Samuel kill Trinidad. If killing Trinidad was still reasonable, then the next thing was incredible. Arthur actually killed Veronica. In the previous uproar of the marriage rejection incident, the triangle relationship between Arthur and Veronica and Rambus was already known to the world. Veronica was once Arthur's teacher and Arthur's most infatuated woman. Later, Veronica was forced to marry Arthur's uncle, Prince Sophistry. After Sophistry died mysteriously, she unfortunately became a widow. Not long ago, at the engagement ceremony, Arthur publicly rejected Rambus, who had been waiting for 7 years, by saying, "You're not the one I love," just for Veronica. But now Arthur killed his most beloved woman with his own hands. What kind of grudge was involved? It was said that apart from these two incidents, Arthur also stole a national treasure of the Longhong Empire. After the incident, the furious Rex the Great sent the Firewing Legion to capture Arthur and the strongest dragon riders to control the entire Jinyao territory. Jinyao territory was soon controlled, but Arthur was missing. 2 of Arthur's guardians and his trusted followers, Samuel, were also missing. That night, the Knights of Light of the Church of Light who were stationed in Jinyao territory retreated overnight under the leadership of Cardinal Bishop Glalin. With the close cooperation between Arthur and the Church of Light in the past, it was likely that he fled with the people of the Church of Light. This was no longer a simple absconding, but a defection. For this reason, the Longhong Empire formally negotiated with the Church of Light, requesting the Church of Light not to interfere in the internal affairs of the Longhong Empire and to hand over the felon, Arthur. Unexpectedly, the Church of Light did not cover up the fact that they protected Arthur from leaving the Longhong Empire. Instead, they publicized the truth of Arthur's defection in a high-profile manner. Since Trinidad led the Iron Scale to enter Jinyao territory, they often disturbed the people for no reason and provoked the local Jade Army, making the originally stable and prosperous Jinyao territory full of complaints. The cause of this duel was that the Iron Scale had caused trouble in the Flower Tavern. They also killed members of the Jade Army's security team who came to stop them and provoke the local Jade Army, causing the originally stable and prosperous Jinyao territory to be filled with complaints. When Samuel, the head of the Jade Army, came in person, Trinidad not only did not apologize and punish the perpetrators, but also further provoked Samuel, which eventually led to the duel. This duel was actually a trap designed by Trinidad. The purpose was to kill Samuel. For this, Trinidad prepared the famous legendary equipment, Ashes Set, in advance, took the black potion, and even summoned a dragon to attack during the duel. Unfortunately, in the face of absolute strength, these tricks appeared pale and powerless. Samuel finally showed his powerful force and defeated Trinidad. After losing the duel, Trinidad actually tried to escape. He was killed on the spot by an angry elder of the dragons who witnessed all this. As the arbitrator of this duel, Gamundan, the eldest disciple of the brilliant swordsman Pari, who had now become the master of the Tseng Thunder Palace, witnessed the whole duel from beginning to end. Moreover, there were 4 dragons, including 2 demigod elders, as witnesses. It was absolutely true. Trinidad's death was not only deserved, but also had nothing to do with Arthur. It was likely that he was instructed by someone to kill Samuel and behead Arthur's right-hand man. The biggest suspect was a certain prince who had a grudge against Arthur and Samuel. The fact that Veronica was killed by Arthur was even more unreasonable. Arthur could even abandon the first beauty of the Ryo Empire, Princess Rambus, who had waited for him for 7 years for her. How could he kill Veronica with his own hands? The real cause of Veronica's death was being poisoned. Originally, this poor woman had suffered from mental illness because of depression for many years. In addition, she had been harassed by a prince who was worse than a beast before. She was frightened and fell ill. This time, Arthur was deliberately led to the Purple Garden Palace, where he found that Veronica was poisoned and dying, and finally died. Veronica's life experience was tragic. She was forced to leave her lover and marry a man who was as old as her father. Moreover, she became a widow early and was bullied and persecuted many times in the palace. Although she finally died in the arms of her lover and fulfilled her last wish, this matter made Arthur suffer an unprecedented blow. Disheartened, this prince gave up everything he had managed and left the Long Huang Empire. As for the national treasure that Arthur had taken away, the church's tone was even more unyielding. This was because it was the treasure, holy light robe, that the 3 supreme angels had bestowed upon the Long Huang Empire. This time, it was only the holy son of the church, Arthur, who had been ordered by the 3 supreme angels to take it back. When the Church of Light's response came out, the whole world was shocked. The first 2 were just internal affairs of the Long Huang Empire or some personal grudges. However, the explanation of the third revealed a very important piece of news. Holy Son! The highest spiritual leader of the entire Church of Light was the Pope, also known as the Pope, the Great Priest, etc. The Pope was chosen from among the Holy Son. Currently, the Pope of Light was Fendes. Except for the Patriarch, Saintess Eudora, the Holy Son had never been chosen. Now Arthur had actually become the Holy Son of the Church of Light. According to reliable sources, Arthur was actually one of the 3 supreme angels, the Holy Son appointed by Raphael, who was also the next successor of the Pope. Everyone knew that the relationship between the Jinyao territory and the Church of Light was very close, but they never thought that it was to such an extent. A prince who had defected from the Long Huang Empire? The future Pope of the Church of Light? Was there an equal sign between the two? The identity of a son of saint was simply too dazzling. Ordinary princes, heirs of empires, and so on could only be described as lackluster in comparison. Since he was a son of saint, he couldn't possibly bear the stain of defecting. This wasn't only true for Rex the Great, but also for ordinary people. Facing the overbearing Church of Light, even though the Long Huang Empire was one of the 2 holy empires and had the support of the dragons, it could no longer insist on its own opinion. Since Arthur was the Holy Son, this matter could not only be an internal affair of the Long Huang Empire. After weighing the pros and cons, Rex the Great finally made a concession. He cancelled the arrest warrant for Arthur, and ordered a strict investigation of the instigator behind the duel incident and the poisoning of Veronica. The first to bear the brunt was the second prince, Garfield. Garfield had never thought that he would let Trinidad take advantage of Rex the Great's influence to stab him in the back and kill that damned Samuel. However, so many more deadly knives had been drawn. As for the poisoning of Veronica, it had nothing to do with him at all. The relationship between Garfield and Arthur was the worst. When he was forced to return the Jinyao territory to this brother, he used many dishonorable tricks during the handover. In the end, he became a laughingstock because of the rapid rise of the Jinyao territory. More importantly, Garfield had once coveted Veronica's beauty and attempted to molest her. This was also the most important reason why he became enemies with Arthur. Without a doubt, the biggest suspect in the whole incident was the unlucky second prince. Originally, Garfield had been cheering for Arthur's defeat and escape. He had planned to speak to Rex the Great and take the opportunity to swallow the fat meat of the Jinyao territory. However, not only had his hopes been completely dashed, but he had also been imprisoned. Apart from colluding with Trinidad, many of his dirty deeds had been dug out. Many of his henchmen had been disbanded and separated, and some had even been executed. Rex the Great might have been behind the incident of Arthur, but at such a critical moment, Garfield had undoubtedly been pushed out as a scapegoat. Even if he could get rid of the incident safely in the end, there would probably be an unimaginable stain on his reputation, and he would be completely disqualified from inheriting the throne. After doing all this, Rex the Great publicly announced a shocking decision again. He had disassociated himself from Arthur. From then on, Arthur was no longer Arthur Roland, nor was he the prince of the Long Huang Empire. He was just Arthur, the holy son of the church. This meant that all the relationships between Rex the Great, the Long Huang Empire, and Arthur had been completely cleared. Although he had been forced to make concessions after suffering losses, Rex the Great had shown his toughness in another way. This was a family matter between father and son. Even the Church of Light could not intervene. Soon after Rex the Great announced this decision, the Church of Light officially announced that in 3 months, they would officially hold the canonization ceremony of the Holy Son in the Holy Mountain of Light, and the heads of state of all countries would be invited to attend the ceremony. One of the special guests was Rex the Great. Although there was nothing wrong with it in terms of etiquette, it was obvious that it was a slap in the face. This undoubtedly gave the people on the streets another topic to talk about. Many people were full of anticipation for the good show that would take place in 3 months. Chapter 10:19. While the entire human world was shocked by the news about the Holy Son did not enter the Holy Mountain as everyone expected. Instead, he secretly recuperated in the Palace of Light of a small country, the Merlot Kingdom. There were several reasons for this recuperation. The first was the Holy Light Magic Robe. Although he had the title of Holy Son, on this trip to the Holy Mountain, his ultimate goal was to take Tiffany away and understand the source of creation. It was very likely that he would have to face the powerful forces of the 3 angels of light again. No matter how clever the plan was, it was impossible to resist the absolute suppression of the enemy's strength. Therefore, Chen Rui had to seize the time to master and strengthen his own combat power, which was equivalent to an extra chance of survival. It took Chen Rui less than 10 minutes to subdue the Crown of Thorns. At that time, the main reason was that Glalin overdrafted his life to activate the Crown of Thorns. However, because his body could not bear the power of the Crown of Thorns automatically chose him, who had the body of glorious light. In other words, he had stolen the fruits of labor of Glalin. In the Ryo Empire, after obtaining the Holy Grail, it took him 3 days to successfully analyze it. However, this Holy Light Magic Robe took him 7 days. The abilities of the Crown of Thorns were Divine Healing and Divine Blessing, while the abilities of the Holy Grail were Holy Protection and Holy Soul. The Holy Light Magic Robe also had two abilities. 1. Absolute Barrier, create a protective force field with a diameter of 5 meters. Can defend against any form or strength of attack when immobile. Lasts for 10 seconds. Can be used once every 24 hours. 2. Split Light Holy Shadow. 1. Split Light, create 2 doppelgangers. Lasts for 5 seconds. Can be used once every 24 hours. 2. Holy Shadow, accumulate enough light attribute energy to create a projection pearl. After using it, summon a projection to fight. The projection has half of the combat power of the original body. Lasts for up to 1 hour. If the projection fails or disappears, the light attribute energy must be gathered again to create it. Crown of Thorns was equivalent to a logistical skill, healing, dispelling, and altering physique. Of course, it also had a certain dispelling effect. Holy Grail was more of a combat support. Holy Light Robe was a true combat attribute. Absolute Barrier could defend against any strength attack. This meant that even a fake god couldn't break this barrier. It was the strongest defense. Although 10 seconds seemed short, for a battle at Chunrei's level, 1 second could change a lot and even reverse the entire situation. Diffraction was a powerful attack skill. It was equivalent to splitting into 3. Although the doppelgangers only had half of the main body's combat power, the power of some ultimate skills was not as simple as doubling or tripling. The specific example was Shura's supernova starburst. Chunrei tried the light-splitting technique in the Super Systems training ground and found that he could perform various moves at the same time, including killer moves such as Scorching Dragon Roar and Red Extinction. It was worth mentioning that the power of split light was not infinite. It was equivalent to overdrawing his own strength in advance. After using it, he would fall into a period of weakness. The stronger the move, the weaker it was. But in any case, the advantages of this move outweighed the disadvantages. Especially when Chunrei's current attack power had reached a bottleneck, this skill increased his attack power to a terrifying extent. As long as he used it at the right time, this split light was enough to kill a strong enemy in one blow. As for the effect of Holy Shadow, Chunrei wanted to try it. He immediately lied that he had already understood half of the power of the holy object. Next, he needed a lot of light energy to be truly recognized by the holy robe. Together with Chunrei, Cardinal Glalin and the current Gamundan of the Tsanglei Temple accompanied Chunrei to train in the Light Temple. Initially, they stayed in the Merlot Kingdom because of Chunrei's special request to comprehend the holy robe. When they heard that Chunrei was about to be recognized by the holy object, they were overjoyed. They immediately transferred a large number of light-type consumable treasures from all over the world. The Church of Light was quite powerful. In a short time, Chunrei had already obtained a large number of materials. However, the appetite of the holy robe was not small. It consumed half of the materials to complete the energy needed for Holy Shadow. After trying, Chunrei experimented that this Holy Shadow had all his skills, including polar transformation, but only half of his strength. Moreover, it was equivalent to the effect of a battery. The more powerful the move or the greater the damage received, the faster the battery was consumed, and the shorter the duration of the clone. In the experiment, he also discovered a very wonderful effect of the clone, which was the connection of the storage warehouse. The things obtained by the clone could be stored in the storage warehouse of the main body. This meant that the clone could go to some dangerous places to complete some special missions. The second reason why Chunrei did not go to the Holy Mountain immediately was Rala and Isabella. As guardians, the two women must go to the Holy Mountain together. If there was really danger, Chunrei could keep them in the super system in time or directly send them back to the demon realm. However, these two guardians were problematic. Rala was the guardian that should have been dead. This was officially cancelled by Chunrei in front of Raphael. Although Isabella had the secret treasure, evil blue tear, and the holy scale, given by Dragon Emperor Palgoris, she was demons after all. Palgoris's holy scale might be able to deceive ordinary superpower houses, but it might not be able to deceive existences like the three supreme angels. During his stay in the Merlot kingdom, Ben Hong generously divided a bit of his soul power and taught the two women the secret technique, breath lock, that could disguise their appearance and breath. With the soul of a peak pseudo-god, coupled with this secret technique, the temperament of Isabella and Rala changed considerably. Rala was brimming with the breath of the emerald dragon, and her strength was shown to be at the early stage of the kingdom. On the other hand, Isabella looked like a real human. This time, Ben Hong once again entered the 6-star mark on Chen Rui's arm and went to the holy mountain together. Chen Rui and she were old rivals. Especially after he showed that he put Isabella and Rala into space, Ben Hong had a new estimate of Chen Rui's strength and means. Both sides were well aware that they were using each other. At least before seeing the origin of creation, they would not fall out. It was meaningless to threaten Isabella and Rala now. After completing all the preparations, the Holy Sun finally set off. Accompanied by Glalin and Gamundin, they entered the White Cliff through a teleportation array used by the church's higher-ups in the nearby kingdom. As soon as they entered the White Cliff, they saw the Knights of Radiance lined up neatly on both sides of the passageway. They pulled out their long swords, held them in front of their chests, and knelt on one knee. Gamundin introduced them to Chen Rui. This was the highest etiquette of the Knights of Radiance. Chen Rui nodded, quietly opened his collar, and glanced at the ring with the ring of blood hanging on it. Sure enough, it was emitting a rich luster. It seemed that Tiffany was still in the holy mountain of light. They rode all the way to the Holy Light City. Outside the city gate, Chen Rui was warmly welcomed. Behind the Knights of Light on both sides was a large group of believers, chanting the name, Arthur, loudly. At the city gate was a guard of honor personally led by Pope Fandis. The three heads of the Holy Mountain, Fendis, Pusmer, Eudora, Radiant Sword St. Polly, the two cardinal bishops, the chief inquisitor Theseus, all the archbishops, all the higher-ups of the church had arrived. Chen Rui had a strange feeling. This was his third time coming to the headquarters of the Church of Light. The first time was when he came here as Paul's follower to participate in the selection of the Divine Knights. That time, he stole the snow tree. The second time was when he sneaked into the sacred mountain with Ben Hong in an attempt to obtain the source of creation. However, the moment he entered, his whereabouts were exposed, and he encountered the most terrifying enemy, Michael. In the end, he took the risk of taking the wind shadow boots while the two false gods were fighting. This time, it was obvious that he was up to no good as well. Yet, he was so brazen that even the Pope came to greet him personally. Leading a wolf into the house? Just when everyone got off the horses and walked forward, Chen Rui felt that Isabella, who was beside him, suddenly shook. There was a strong spiritual fluctuation. He couldn't help but look at her, only to see that she was staring at a person in front of her. Chen Rui followed her gaze and saw an acquaintance. It was one of the three giants, the Saintess Eudora. Isabella quickly realized that she had lost her composure. She immediately suppressed the abnormal spiritual fluctuation and returned to normal. Chen Rui didn't ask in detail because Pope Fandis had already come to greet him. "Welcome, Your Holiness Arthur." Strictly speaking, the identity of the Holy Son was only equivalent to a cardinal, which was inferior to the Patriarch. The highest spiritual leader along the way, the Pope, was even more incomparable. Unless he was specially conferred as a patriarch like Eudora, it was impossible to receive such courtesy and address from the Pope. However, Arthur, the Holy Son, was extraordinary. In addition to the special identity of the mechanic Grand Master, the most important thing was that he was recognized by the Crown of Thorns. In the situation where the snow tree was stolen and he couldn't convert his physique into light element, it was equivalent to controlling the future of the Church. In addition to the recognition of the Supreme Angel Raphael, it was already a certainty that he would become the next Pope. Even if Fandis wanted to object, he couldn't do so. In terms of actual status, this holy child was already on par with the Patriarch. Even though there had not been an official canonization ceremony, Vadis had already made his stance clear by addressing him as Your Holiness. You flatter me. Chenrei quickly bowed. Your Holiness Fandis, it's my honor to be guided by your Holiness to embark on the path of light. I heard that you have been recognized by the crown of thorns, the Holy Grail, and the robe of holy light? Fandis asked, intentionally spreading his voice far away. Yes, please forgive my rudeness. Chenrei understood what Fandis meant. With a flash of white light, a snow-white robe appeared, faintly emitting silver light. On his head was a crystal-clear crown, and in his hand was a silver-white cup that was brimming with milky white light. When these three holy objects appeared at the same time, Chenrei suddenly felt a strange power surging into his heart. It seemed to have triggered some kind of resonance. The resonance did not only originate from the three holy objects. Before Chenrei came to White Cliff, he had used all three holy objects at the same time, but there was no such phenomenon. The resonance became stronger and stronger. It was a powerful and uncontrollable force. Even with Chenrei's current strength, he felt trembling. The Holy Mountain of Light. The entire Holy Mountain of Light was emitting a strong and pure power, which resonated with the three holy objects that Chenrei had. Not only Chenrei himself, but the three magnates, the three cardinals, and even the ordinary believers could feel it. The light of the crown of thorns, the Holy Grail, and the robe of holy light converged into one, forming a dazzling light. Within the light, a strong, holy aura spread in all directions. Wherever this aura went, some of the weak believers or those with hidden diseases felt their bodies relax, as if their hidden diseases had been healed. They could not help but be overjoyed. A miracle! This is the will of the God of Light. The Holy Sun has been blessed by the God. No one knew who shouted it, but the believers all knelt on the ground. Even the Knights of Light knelt on one knee. Fandis originally only wanted to let Arthur show off the three holy objects to further solidify the reputation of the Holy Sun, which was equivalent to expressing his goodwill to Raphael, who now controlled the Holy Mountain. He did not expect this to happen. The three magnates quickly exchanged glances and bowed to Chenrei. The rest of the members of the church also knelt on the ground and worshipped. No, this is not the power of the gods, Chenrei thought to himself. He had already felt the true nature of this power. Creation. This is the power of the origin of creation. Chapter 1020. After a long time, the huge resonance force that originated from the Holy Mountain, or more accurately, from the Hall of Light, finally subsided. However, Chenrei could feel that this special sense of the origin of creation still existed. If he could maintain this kind of feeling, his understanding and application of the origin of creation would definitely be greatly deepened. Glallen once said that gathering the three holy objects and obtaining the recognition would allow one to obtain an incredible feeling and possess a power that was far beyond that of a holy level. This sentence did not seem to be a bluff. Today, Chenrei finally felt this incredible feeling. Not only Chenrei, but for Ben Hong, who desired to create the origin of creation, this temptation was also quite big. Even the soul hidden in the 6-star mark could not help but tremble a little. However, both Ben Hong and Chenrei were very clear that Arthur only had the strength of a garrison level. This was the enemy's lair, and there were terrifying enemies like Raphael and Michael. Now was definitely not the time to comprehend. If they accidentally exposed themselves because of a small mistake, all their previous efforts would be in vain. Therefore, Ben Hong endured the pain and blocked the sensing power to prevent the breath from leaking. Different from Ben Hong, Chenrei had the good stuff called deep analysis. He quickly engraved that feeling into his memory. On the surface, nothing unusual could be seen. With a slight thought, he put away the three holy objects. Fandis showed an undisguised admiration. Your Holiness Arthur, I didn't expect that you could cause such an amazing miracle the first time you came to the Holy Mountain. Obviously, you are a person favored by God. The Holy Sun is indeed worthy of the title. The coronation ceremony of the Holy Sun will be held in 3 months. Before that, you will temporarily live in the Hall of Holy Light in the Holy Light City. After the coronation ceremony, You will officially live in the Holy Mountains God's Seal Peak. God's Seal Peak was the first of the three main peaks of the Holy Mountain. It was also the place where Pope Fandus lived. It was the highest spiritual symbol of the Church of Light. Fandus' action showed his stance and attitude. Although Arthur was chased out of the Long Huang Empire by Rex and even broke off the father-son relationship, it was different in the Holy Mountain. Fandus would not monopolize power like Rex. Without a doubt, Arthur would be the next pope. As a matter of fact, Fandus might have had the same fear and unwillingness as Rex did. He represented Michael's side, and Arthur was obviously Raphael's. However, now that Michael was in a deep sleep and Gabriel had not been seen for many years, only the awakened Raphael was in control of the situation. Since Arthur was personally promoted by Raphael and was recognized by the three holy relics, especially the crown of thorns, his position was naturally unshakable. According to Raphael, Arthur had also made an unimaginable contribution, which was to destroy one of the three main altars of the Black Death apostles. The main altar that the Church had been searching for many years was actually destroyed by Arthur. The one who did it was actually Arthur's guardian and Raphael himself, who was summoned by Arthur. However, Arthur's contribution was undeniable. Under such circumstances, even if Fandus had any ideas, he could only keep them to himself. Although the Pope held the highest authority in the Church and had limitless glory, he was actually just a chess piece in Michael's hands, or an ant in the eyes of the three angels. If he really broke Raphael's taboo, he would definitely be killed. The most Raphael could do was to inform Michael and raise another person to take the throne. As you wish. Chenrei showed a respectful expression. He did not seem to be in high spirits because of Fandus' announcement, or the miracle he had caused. Instead, he seemed humble and low-key. Fandus nodded. He was very satisfied with Chenrei's attitude, and personally brought him to the Hall of Holy Light. The Hall of Holy Light stood on top of a giant tower, allowing one to see the entirety of Holy Light City at a glance. It was the core of Holy Light City, and it was said that many miracles had occurred there. It was a sacred place where one could listen to the teachings of the gods. Without the permission of the Pope and the Patriarch, even the cardinal bishops could not easily enter. The Hall of Holy Light was protected by powerful magical matrices, and the entrance was guarded by a large number of Knights of Radiance. In the headquarters of the Church of Light, there was basically no problem of security. It was more of a symbol and authority. After a while of feigning civility, Chenrei sent Fandus and the others away and settled down in the Hall of Holy Light. The resonance of the three holy items with the origin of creation made Ben Hong's heart race. Although this feeling was far from being able to directly see the book of creation, it was still a very rare feeling. It was much safer than sneaking into the Shrine of Light at the peak of the Holy Mountain. Therefore, Ben Hong immediately left the hidden 6-star mark and began to modify the magical matrices of the entire hall. She wanted to change the magical matrices into a special matrices that could amplify and attract external forces. With her strength, the Knights of Radiance would not be able to detect the movements at all. After Ben Hong left, Chenrei immediately asked Isabella, "Innie, what happened?" Previously, during the welcoming ceremony outside the city, he clearly felt the strong spiritual waves from Isabella. The source seemed to be one of the three magnates, the saintess of the blessed shrine, Eudora? Isabella revealed a bitter smile, shook her head, and did not speak. The structure of the magical matrices on the rooftops outside seems interesting. Let me go take a look. Rala suddenly spoke. Although the fairy Miss Long usually liked to play dumb to prank people, when it was really time to play dumb, she would not ask for the root of the matter. Chenrei understood Rala's intention. He nodded to her, and watched the fairy Miss Long walk out of the hall. When he looked at Isabella again, her blue eyes were actually a little red. Sure enough, at the beginning, she was trying hard to suppress some kind of emotion. Innie? Nothing, I just feel stupid. Isabella lowered her head, and her veil was immediately soaked with tears. Her trembling voice was filled with regret. It's really indescribable stupidity. Chenrei did not ask much. He held her hand and sat down facing her. It was definitely not an ordinary thing that could make Isabella, who had always been calm and resourceful, lose her composure like this. Isabella leaned her head on his chest, and her shoulders shrugged slightly. All Chenrei could do was to kiss and stroke her hair lovingly. After a while, Isabella finally stopped sobbing. She said with a hoarse voice, "I finally understand why the breeze shadow boots are in the holy mountain of light." Chenrei's heart moved. More than 100 years ago, Isabella, who was still an ignorant girl, was bewitched by a man from the human world. She was so devoted to that man that she did not hesitate to turn against her family and become enemies with her sisters. She stole the clan's highest artifact, the breeze shadow boots, and gave it to the man. As a result, the man immediately abandoned Isabella after getting the artifact. He also cast a fatal seal of light annihilation on her, and finally disappeared. This man not only deceived the girl's feelings for the artifact, but also killed her secretly. It could be said that he was extremely vicious. Last time, Chenrei took back the breeze shadow boots from the light shrine in the battle of the holy mountain of light and returned it to Isabella. The man from the human world that year must be related to the church. Chenrei originally wanted to avenge Isabella, but unfortunately, he could not find out who this person was. From what Isabella said just now and the emotional fluctuations before, that man was actually, Chenrei suddenly thought of what Isabella had said before she was seriously injured by Brock. That man only has eyes for the artifact. Even when I took the initiative to offer myself, he showed restraint. It was not until he got the artifact and mercilessly abandoned me that I realized that he actually hated women and liked men. To be able to resist the attraction of Isabella's stunning beauty, and even disdain taking the initiative to offer herself, and also like men, Chenrei naturally thought that the man was a gay. Now it seemed that there was a fundamental concept that was misguided before. Men. Those who didn't like women and liked men were not only non-mainstream gays but also women. The Saintess was a woman. By the way, in the Battle of Starlight Academy's Star Tower trial, Chenrei once defeated the four-winged angel Zhe-Han-Jen, known as God's Exploration. He once revealed that the Seal of Wind was related to a woman. It turned out that this was the truth of that year. Chenrei shook Isabella's hand. "Are you sure it's her?" Isabella knew that Chenrei had understood and nodded. Although her appearance was hidden, that temperament and intuition, even if she turned into ashes, I would still recognize her. Not only that, she also used a secret technique to devour a secret treasure of the Belphegor royal family, Lightning Heart, and my own power. Now, there is still a remnant breath of the secret treasure on her body that has not been completely absorbed. I can clearly feel it through the evil blue tear. Sure enough, the person who cheated away the breeze shadow boots was the Saintess Eudora, who disguised as a man. Chenrei was shocked. "Your power was devoured by her? Why didn't you tell me about it?" "I'm sorry." Isabella's head lowered even more. "It's nothing." Chenrei sighed and shook his head. "I'm just blaming myself. I didn't know you had suffered so much." The incident with the breeze shadow boots left a fatal wound in Isabella's heart. Because of this, her temperament changed greatly, and she almost died with hatred. Although it was slowly healed by the comfort of true love, she was definitely not willing to reopen this scar. Isabella leaned her whole body into his arms and smiled bitterly. "I deserve it. I hurt my father, Sabrina, and those people. It's all because of me. In the 100 years before I met you, I hated everyone, but I hated myself the most. Everything is over. Forget the hatred and self-blame, okay?" Chenrei hugged the trembling body in his arms tightly. "We have a better life and a more hopeful future. You have proven all your promises with your actions. If the biggest misfortune in my life is meeting a man, then the biggest fortune is meeting another man." Isabella put her face on his heart. "I only know the value of what I have after losing it." "I understand what you mean. I'll listen to you, my man." Chenrei nodded. "In any case, I must vent my anger. I can't let Isabella suffer in vain back then. Actually, to put it bluntly, I was just stupid back then. Isabella took a deep breath and gradually calmed her mind. Her original strength was not strong. After devouring the power of me and the secret treasure, her strength improved greatly. It was certain that she was very proficient in the secret technique of camouflage, so she concealed her gender and appearance. As a weak woman, going to the dangerous demon realm alone was a good way to protect herself. It was just that although her devouring secret technique was as vicious as her heart, the secret treasure of the Belphegor royal family was not so easy to devour. In addition to the power of fire, that fiery heart also had a powerful power of wind. After she got the breeze shadow boots from me, she was afraid that a long delay would cause trouble, so she forcefully devoured it in a hurry, leaving behind future troubles. Judging from the breath I felt just now, the impact of the wind backfire still exists today. Unless I use some special power to expand my own power of fire to an extremely large amount, then I can completely integrate those wind powers. Duo. Chenrui blurted out. Now he fully understood why Eudora believed in a way to absorb the power of Phoenix back then. It was to completely eliminate the backfire of the fiery heart. Chapter 1021. The truth of the breeze shadow boots incident had been revealed, but there were still many mysteries in Chenrui's heart. That was Tiffany. Tiffany had a deep resentment against Raisin. She abandoned the throne of the demon realm and insisted on coming to the human world in order to find her mother. Raisin once said that Tiffany had the sensing power of her bloodline, and she could use this power to find the whereabouts of her mother. Now that she had become the disciple of Saint Eudora, then the saint was likely to be Tiffany's mother. The time when Raisin had a relationship with a certain woman and gave birth to Tiffany and the time when the breeze shadow boots was cheated was roughly more than 100 years ago. Then it could be inferred that the protagonist of these two events was Eudora, but there must be a problem with the order of the two events. The combination of Eudora and Raisin was the result of being manipulated by Satan. The purpose was to use the physique of both sides to create a key of light and dark so that he could enter the mysterious place in the future to obtain the silver box. This premeditation had now become a reality. Let's imagine that the reason why Eudora came to the demon realm was probably for training or some kind of mission. She was captured by Satan, then she had a relationship with Raisin under his control and gave birth to Tiffany. After Tiffany was born, Eudora lost her value. With Satan's strength, he naturally wouldn't care about the life and death of this ant. It was very likely that Eudora escaped from the Bloody Empire. Then she met Isabella and staged the scene of her disguising as a man to cheat the breeze shadow boots. Chenrui remembered that when Raisin entrusted him to come to the human world to find Tiffany, his last sentence was, "By the way, be careful of that woman." It was necessary to be wary of others. Just determining the role this woman played in the breeze shadow boots incident back then was definitely worth being careful of. As Chenrui was pondering, Rala had returned to the hall. She held Isabella's hand and said something. Isabella kept nodding. He didn't know if Rala knew the truth of this matter, but Innie's eyes were obviously a lot more relaxed. Miss Long was actually very meticulous. The relationship between Isabella and her had always been good, second only to Athena. Especially now that Innie was the daughter of Isabella and Span, she was a real sister to her. Miss Long cherished the relatives and friends that she truly recognized. At this moment, Chenrui felt that the data in the analytical eyes was fleeting. At the same time, the 6-star mark on his arm was hot. Ben Hong, who was still setting up the magic circle outside, had returned to the mark. An anxious voice came into Chenrui's soul. "Be careful, Raphael is coming!" Chenrui was taken aback. He looked at Isabella and Rala. As his thoughts turned quickly, he had launched the fusion power of the star sealing platform and took the two women into the star sealing platform instantly. It was not the first time that Ben Hong saw Chenrui use this strange space ability. This time, it was actually as untraceable as the last time. Even he, a peak pseudogod powerhouse, did not notice it. He couldn't help but be secretly vigilant. But now was definitely not the time to study this problem. Faced with Raphael, who was about to arrive, Ben Hong could only use the breath lock technique. With all his might, entering a state similar to a state of suspended animation. He concealed all of his aura and spiritual undulations to prevent Raphael from detecting him. Soon, a man appeared in front of him. The magic circle in the hall did not sense him at all. Even the Knights of Light along the way did not seem to see him. If it weren't for Ben Hong's advance warning, even if Chinrui noticed it with analytical eyes, the other party would have already arrived in front of him. Race, unable to determine. Comprehensive strength assessment, unable to determine. This man was the appearance of Raphael that Chinrui had seen in the Jinyao territory. His eyes had been closed. What was different from the last time was that this time it was not a clone, but his real body. Chinrui pretended to be stunned and looked surprised. Then, he reacted, and bowed deeply. Sir Raphael! Raphael did not open his eyes. Arthur, your performance surprised me. You actually got the recognition of all 3 holy relics and even triggered a miracle. It seems that it was a very wise choice to appoint you as the Holy Son. Although the setback in the Longhorn Empire made me a little depressed, I feel full of confidence and strength when I arrived at the Holy Mountain of Light today. I will definitely not let Sir down. I have always been confident in my own judgment. Raphael nodded slightly. You also have to be confident in yourself. The gains and losses of the Longhorn Empire are only a small part of it. What you get in the future is everything. Understood. Chinrui hesitated for a while and then said as if he had made up his mind. To be honest, sir, I have been baptized by the will of the alchemy civilization in the past 7 years, and almost all of my original memories have been lost. Rex thinks that although my body is Arthur, my soul has become another person. Not only that, as a king who has full control of the empire, when I, his son, showed his outstanding talent that far exceeded his expectations and tolerance, the ferocity hidden behind the mask of affection was revealed without reservation. He did not hesitate to cut off his relationship with me to completely eliminate the threat I posed to the throne of the Longhorn Empire. I was too naive this time, and I will not make the same mistake again. I don't know what a small empire needs, but in the Holy Mountain of Light, the most important thing is talent. So what if you are? So what if you are not? I can promise you that as long as you show your ability, you will never have to worry about anything else. You will be the Holy Son, the future Pope Arthur. Thank you for your guidance, sir. Chinrui bowed deeply again. You have to pay for it. You know that I have always been fair with rewards and punishments. You have indirectly contributed to the destruction of the main altar of the evil god, and you have also been recognized by the 3 holy relics. However, these are not enough for you to control the future of the Holy Mountain of Light. You need to do one thing, and that is to show the power of the God of Light's blessing in front of everyone at the canonization ceremony of the Holy Son that will be held at the Blessed Peak in 3 months, and use the holy blessing of the Crown of Thorns to transform 100 Templars into pure light physiques. If you can do this, you will have an irreplaceable and absolute position. Within a year, you can directly sit on the throne of the Pope. Ascending to the throne of the Pope within a year was an incredible speed for any holy son or saintess in the history of the Church. However, Raphael's tone was very firm. In fact, be it the Pope or the Holy Son, they were just pawns for the 3 angels to control the faith. They could be abandoned at any time because of value or profit. Yes. Chinrui suppressed his excitement and asked doubtfully, Sir, although the holy blessing can guide the power of the holy, dispel all evil forces, and has the miraculous effect of purifying and transforming physiques, its power is limited. If you want to transform a normal physique into a light physique, the success rate is not high. If you want to transform 100 Templars at the same time, forgive me for being blunt, it is impossible. Raphael smiled lightly. It is impossible to transform them directly, so it will take 3 months. Chinrui suddenly understood. Sir, you mean that the canonization ceremony will be held 3 months later because we need to make some preparations to make this impossible possible? Yes. Raphael praised. Your reaction is indeed timely. The blessed peak is now actively preparing. You will naturally know when the time comes. However, even with that kind of preparation, it is still not enough. First of all, your power is too weak. I remember you said that this is because of the inheritance spiritual imprint of the ancient alchemy civilization. The imprint will automatically transform external forces into the understanding of the alchemy Grand Master, so you must fully control the spiritual imprint in order to truly improve your power. Although a mechanic Grand Master is of great significance to the entire human world, the skill of mechanics is not a skill that a holy son. No, the Pope must master, even if it is a Grand Master level mechanic skill. So, now you have to make a decision or a trade-off. Trade-off? Shenrui faintly had a bad feeling. You must abandon the spiritual imprint of the alchemy civilization and become my believer. I will cast a powerful baptism on you. I will grant you a new power and the power of faith bestowed by the gods, which can make you directly become the peak of the saint powerhouse. There is even a chance to transform into a real angel in the future. With this power, you will be able to exert the power of the crown of thorns to the extreme and turn the impossible into possible. It seems that the real magical effect of the crown of thorns requires the support of the power of faith. But becoming a believer of Raphael? This is not a simple contract that can easily be used to fool through the spiritual link. Once it is exposed, all the previous efforts will be wasted. The spiritual imprint was originally a nonsense excuse, and now it is a trap of its own making. Shinrei's brain turned quickly, and he asked tentatively, "Sir, can I consider it? I'm not here today to let you choose, but to announce my decision to you." Raphael's indifferent tone carried an unquestionable power, causing Shinrei's delaying tactic to fail. In Raphael's mind, as a powerful fake god, it was already condescending to meet an ant-like existence. How could there be room for negotiation? Today, he had to agree, even if he didn't want to. Ben Hong, who was in the state of breath-lock, also heard this, and he secretly became vigilant. If Shinrui didn't agree, then it is very likely that he will turn hostile on the spot. Although Raphael's strength is slightly weaker than Michael's, she is only a soul, and her strength is greatly reduced. Plus, this is the home field of the three angels. If they really fight, the best result is to escape like last time. If Shinrui agreed and became a true believer of Raphael's kingdom, then the consequences will be even more serious, and all the secrets will be exposed. Just when Ben Hong was fully alert, Shinrui, who has been thinking, finally made a decision. "Sir Raphael, I agree." Chapter 1022. Raphael nodded in satisfaction at the answer. Arthur was smart enough to make a decision in such a short time. It seemed that he would be a puppet worth cultivating in the future. Raphael did not think that this ant would have the guts to brush off a supreme being like him. Ben Hong, who was prepared to make a move, calmed down. She was very clear that this human was not someone who was willing to be controlled by others. His purpose of coming to the holy mountain was not to become the Holy Son or the Pope. Such an answer must mean that he had other intentions. "Sure enough," Shinrei said. "However, before that, I have something to report to Sir. I originally wanted to report this matter to Sir. It just so happens that Sir is here today. Make it short." Raphael's voice was calm but dignified. "It's like this. When I entered the sacred mountain today, His Holiness Vladis asked me to show the three holy relics of light. As a result, the three holy relics triggered the power of God's grace. The feeling I got from the power of God's grace was a special resonance power. It seemed to have something to do with the three holy relics. Even after the shocking power disappeared, the power of God's grace still existed in my memory. It was a very mysterious power. It was as vast and boundless as the stars in the sky. I can't describe it with words. You can actually feel that kind of power." Raphael's eyes opened abruptly. The silver pupils emitted a burning light that contained terrifying deterrence. Shinrei instinctively shuddered. He quickly bowed his head and bowed. His body trembled slightly in cooperation. He looked like he was too shocked to speak. Raphael stared at Chenrei for a moment, and retracted his deterrence. Continue. Yes, my lord. Under the stimulation of this power, I can feel that the absorption speed of the ancient alchemy civilization's spiritual imprint has increased by more than 10 times. Moreover, it has almost completely fused with my soul. If I forcefully remove it, I might be in danger. Raphael frowned. Chenrei continued. Sir Raphael, some people are willing to be unknown for a lifetime. Some people can't stand the loneliness of being ignored. They would rather pursue that moment of brilliance. I have just failed once. I will never tolerate another failure. So, I have made up my mind to bet this life. If I can't soar to the sky, I will disappear. Well said. Raphael's silver eyes showed a hint of appreciation. I have seen your determination. If you have anything to say, say it all at once. My idea is to first try to use that special resonance power to completely absorb the power of the spiritual imprint of the ancient alchemy civilization. Because I have only absorbed nearly half of the power, which is the imprint of mechanics. If I can completely absorb the imprint, then the soul power and all the external forces absorbed before will all be turned into my own strength. My strength will naturally improve by leaps and bounds. Not only that, I will also master the manufacturing method of black potions. As long as I reach a certain level, I can manufacture the highest black potions such as Resurrection Potion and Longevity Potion. Raphael was slightly moved. At present, the church had a pharmaceutics Grand Master, Archbishop Pavero of the Holy Mountain. He could configure 2 eternal potions. He was already the strongest pharmaceutics Grand Master in the human world, but he was far from being comparable to the Grand Master who could configure Resurrection Potion and Longevity Potion. Once Arthur could become a dual Grand Master of mechanics and pharmaceutics, or even the highest Grand Master, the benefits to the entire church would be self-evident in terms of reputation and benefits. Moreover, letting Arthur abandon his identity as a mechanic Grand Master, directly transform into his believer, and use the power of baptism to forcibly increase his strength would also consume a considerable part of Raphael's own strength and faith power. It would be great if he could help Arthur increase his own power without any effort. When the time came, he would only need to bestow some power of faith to Arthur, based on his strength, and he would be able to drive the crown of thorns to the desired effect. In fact, before Sir came, I wanted to try this. I made some changes to the magic circle outside the Hall of Holy Light. I wanted to use this to amplify the perception of the resonance, and further accelerate the integration of the alchemy civilization's spiritual imprint. However, due to the short time since I arrived, I still couldn't fully crack the mystery of the magic circle. Therefore, the changes were only partially completed. If there is anything presumptuous, please forgive me, sir. If I still can't succeed with the help of the power of God's blessing. At this point, Chenrei gritted his teeth and showed a firm expression. I'm willing to forcibly erase the spiritual imprint of the ancient alchemy civilization and make the riskiest attempt. Compared with your unexpected ability, I admire your unreserved frankness more. I hope that in front of me, this complete frankness can always be maintained. Who was Raphael? He had long discovered the changes to the magic circle outside. Now that Arthur took the initiative to confess this matter, Raphael was even more convinced. Sir's will is my lifelong commitment. Chenrei knew that Raphael's mind had loosened, so he immediately showed a humble expression. If that's the case. Raphael had already made up his mind. Close your eyes. I'll take you to a place. Chenrei only felt his heart pounding. He faintly guessed where Raphael was taking him. He tried his best to stabilize his emotions and closed his eyes. After a moment of dizziness, Raphael's voice sounded, "Open your eyes." Chenrei opened his eyes and saw a large hall in front of him. It was surrounded by light, and exuded a vast and boundless aura of power. This aura contained the infinite mysteries of the growth of all things in the universe. Although it was not the first time he had seen this divine hall of light, it still gave Chenrei a feeling of shock. It was as if he was as small as a grain of sand in the sea. Even the origin in any of the silver boxes he had seen before did not have such a feeling. This was because this was the complete origin of creation, the book of creation. This. Chinray magnified his astonishment and seemed incoherent. There is such a strong aura of divine favor here. Yes, this is the divine hall of light at the peak of the holy mountain, where the god of light once descended. This is also the largest forbidden area of the entire holy mountain. Even the Pope and the two patriarchs need special permission to enter this place. There are countless dangers along the way. If I hadn't brought you here, you wouldn't have been able to cross the first step at the foot of the mountain. Not to mention you, even a super strong person who has surpassed the saint level can't forcibly break through the sealing force along the way. Chinray was very clear that Raphael's words were not alarmist talk. There was actually a star left behind here. Back when he was lucky enough to retrieve the breeze shadow boots from the divine hall of light, he had risked using the stealth skill to return once. However, he could not see the divine hall of light as easily as now. There was an extremely powerful power of ancient runes all around him. Not only did it block his vision, but it also sealed the space. If he had not retreated in time, he would have been lost here. Sir Raphael's care and trust make me feel terrified. I can only repay it with the purest loyalty. Chinray nodded. Then may I try the 3 holy objects? Raphael nodded. Chinray took a deep breath and the 3 holy objects appeared on his body at the same time. This time, it caused the entire holy mountain to be shocked as at the beginning, but the resonance in his heart was 10 times stronger than before. Chinray had now completely integrated the consciousness of Arthur. His soul power was unprecedentedly pure and powerful. Coupled with the special effect of the 3 holy objects, if he could stay here to comprehend, then he had full confidence to master the origin of creation. All he lacked was time. But now that Raphael was here, he couldn't show any flaws in any case. Otherwise, the welfare that was close at hand would become the most terrifying weapon. Ben Hong also understood this. He resisted the strong temptation and tried his best to restrain his breath. While Chinray desperately used deep analysis to engrave the memory imprint, he pretended to fall into some kind of contemplation. The power breath on his body began to change and jump constantly. After a period of time, in Raphael's senses, Chinray's original warrior-level strength actually began to change. He was promoted to master level in one fell swoop. Raphael's eyes flashed. Although this kind of strength was not worth mentioning in his eyes, it had extraordinary significance for Arthur, who had the inheritance of the ancient alchemy civilization. When he gave Arthur the power of light last time, it couldn't improve the other party's strength. Now, the power of the Book of Creation could actually make Arthur break through. It seemed that what Arthur said previously was right. The origin of creation could greatly accelerate his fusion speed. After Chinray broke through to the level of Demon King, the 3 holy objects on his body were put away again. However, he didn't talk to Raphael. Instead, he seemed to have entered a certain state. A potion test bench appeared in front of him, and he began to quickly configure the potions. At first, his technique seemed a little jerky. He seemed to be adapting to something. Later on, his movements were smooth like flowing water, faintly revealing an unfathomable momentum. Bottles of potions were quickly configured. Red healing potion, green spirit potion, orange antidote. With the proficiency of the movements, the final color of the potion was white. White potion was the symbol of a potion master. It seemed that in this short period of time, Arthur, who was originally a mechanic grand master, actually became a potion master. Even though Raphael was well informed, he couldn't help but be secretly surprised. Although mechanics and pharmaceutics were both 2 major disciplines of alchemy, they were 2 completely different fields of knowledge. A double master was extremely rare in the history of alchemy, let alone a grand master. Although Arthur only showed the standard of a potion master, judging from the facts just now, he had every reason to believe that Arthur could become a double Grand Master of Potion and Mechanics, or even an unprecedented double Grand Master. This time, he really picked up a treasure. Ha ha! Arthur raised the bottle of white potion that had just been configured and laughed. His laughter was full of vigor. Suddenly, he realized something and quickly showed a terrified expression. Sir Raphael, please forgive me for losing my composure. I was just too excited. It's okay. Raphael asked calmly. What about the spiritual imprint? Most of the spiritual imprint has been fused. The strange thing is that although it's not completely fused, under the effect of a special power, my strength has been improved qualitatively. Even if I'm just immersed in this breath of creation, it can greatly speed up my understanding. It's an indescribable feeling. It seems that something is being bred. Or created. No, it should be creation, Raphael said lightly. Yes. It's creation. Chenrui deliberately led Raphael to say it himself. He said, Today, I'm actually just digesting the previous power of understanding. The speed will be relatively slower later, but as long as I can continue to accept the power of creation, I'll be able to fuse the spiritual imprint completely in 2 months at most. No, maybe only 1 month. By then, whether it's alchemy or strength, they'll reach an unprecedented level. Raphael nodded secretly. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, and the white potion was real, he would not have believed that the Book of Creation could have such an effect. However, the stronger the ability of Arthur, the more advantageous it would be for the Church of Light and the 3 angels to control the faith. Judging from the ability that this prince had shown in the Jinyao territory, it was likely that he would push the Church of Light to a new height in the future. Taking a step back, even if he could not succeed, there was still time to use the last method in 2 months at most. If I can succeed, please allow me to complete the ceremony of transforming into a temple knight in 3 months' time. Then, under the witness of everyone, including that Rex, I'll publicly accept the baptism and become your most loyal believer. Chenrui bowed deeply to Raphael. This was advancing in order to retreat, delaying the time of becoming a believer to 3 months later. Raphael nodded slightly. I agree to your request. Your loyalty will be reciprocated. I'll now give you a privilege, and that is to comprehend in front of this temple of light. There's a special badge here. As long as you follow the method I've taught you, you can come here through the exempted space channel to comprehend. The time limit is 2 hours each time. After 2 hours, you'll be transported back to where you came from. However, you have to remember 2 things. First, this space channel can only be entered by yourself. Second, you can only stay where you are. Do not approach or try to enter the Temple of Light. If you violate any of these, then there's only one undeniable consequence, death. Thank you for your kindness. Chenrui suppressed the ecstasy in his heart and respectfully received the badge with both hands. Don't let me down. Raphael glanced at him. After you complete the integration of the spiritual imprint, go to the Blessed Palace to find Eudora and test the prepared power. In any case, there must be no mistakes in the ceremony of transformation in 3 months' time. If it was an outstanding person like Ben Hong in front of him, Raphael would never trust him so easily. However, since Rex the Great announced that he was no longer his father and son, the Holy Mountain of Light had become the only way out for Arthur. If it were not for the Crown of Thorns, Raphael, who had absolute power, would not pay attention to this lowly existence that could be erased at any time. He thought of himself as a flying dragon in the sky. Why would he waste energy to consider the thoughts of an ant on the ground? Therefore, Raphael did not have any more doubts. I understand, my lord. Watching Raphael's figure gradually disappear in the air, Chenrui immediately turned his eyes to the Temple of Light in front of him. That look was like a wretched uncle looking at a lowly who wanted to see a goldfish. Chapter 1023. Unknowingly, a month had passed. Chenrui still lived in the Temple of Holy Light. In the eyes of the people of the church, he had now completely adapted to the life of the church and settled down. Being here was much more leisurely than being a lord. Not only was it leisurely, but it was also monotonous. There were no cumbersome matters of the previous estate, and there was no intrigue in the palace, on the surface. He just cultivated behind closed doors every day. He rarely even walked out of the holy light city. Chenrui spent 2 hours every day in front of the Temple of Light to comprehend the origin of creation. He had benefited a lot during this time. Creation and destruction were diametrically opposed forces. He, who had already mastered the origin of destruction, inevitably had traces of destruction in his understanding and habits. This was precisely the biggest obstacle to comprehending the power of creation. The deeper he went, the more so it was. Not only Chenrui had this difficulty, but even Ben Hong was the same. In this case, although each had their own ulterior motives, the two still verified their respective insights from time to time out of common interests to better master the power of creation. However, what surprised Ben Hong was that Chenrui's comprehension of the origin of creation seemed to be faster than her, a peak pseudo-god. Ben Hong already knew that the predecessors of the 3 holy artifacts were the vessels of the origin of creation. This should be the biggest reason for Chenrui's rapid progress. Therefore, she also secretly coveted these 3 holy artifacts, especially the Holy Grail. Since Chenrui put Veronica's remnant soul into the Holy Grail, he never let Ben Hong enter the Holy Grail to nourish his soul. However, the 3 holy artifacts had already recognized Chenrui. Even if she killed Chenrui, she might not get the power of the 3 holy artifacts. In fact, the reason why Chenrui had such progress was not only because of the 3 holy artifacts, but also the special functions of deep analysis and the tree of nature. Although there were only 2 hours a day, in addition to Chenrui's comprehension in front of the Temple of Light, deep analysis could continue to analyze and absorb the special insights in the memory imprint after he returned. Coupled with the time rule of the super training ground, it was equivalent to hundreds of times more time than Ben Hong to comprehend every day. As for the Tree of Nature, it was an unexpected surprise. In the last battle at the Tree of Nature in the Silver Moon Immortal Capital, Chenrui boldly used the law of destruction to reverse deduce at the moment of life and death. He comprehended a little seed of the origin of creation and formed the prototype of the law. This seed originated from the main card of wood and the Tree of Nature that the legendary prophet had given him. The Tree of Nature provided a good development platform for the origin of creation, which could guide the growth of the origin of creation. With this advantage, Chenrui's true understanding of the origin of creation was still above the level shown by Ben Hong. However, this did not mean that Chenrui could exert power beyond Ben Hong. After all, even if he performed Crimson Polar Star transformation, he only had the combat power of a demigod. In front of a peak pseudo-god like Ben Hong, he was still an existence that could be easily obliterated. Even if Ben Hong's soul was damaged, Ben Hong might not know the true extent of Chenrui's understanding of the origin of creation, but she was very clear that no matter what, now was the time to maximize the value of the other party. It was not a good time to fall out. Therefore, Ben Hong showed a considerable degree of friendliness. He praised Chenrui's wit, and gave Isabella and Rala some pointers from time to time. Isabella, in particular, had basically digested the holy scale given by Dragon Emperor Palgoris. Together with Ben Hong's pointers, she was already on the verge of turning into a kingdom. Rala's power of a demigod had also been further consolidated. According to the previous agreement between the two parties, Ben Hong would help Chenrui really control the power of the Tower of Brilliance. Generally speaking, the higher the level of the artifact, the more it could enhance or multiply the strength of the user. It was not just the power of the artifact itself. Many artifacts also had special powers. The functions of the artifact were different, and the grade could not be determined by pure destructive power. The rarest was definitely a spatial artifact. In terms of destructive power alone, the Tower of Brilliance was not as good as a basic artifact like the Thunder Flail. However, its function was not only destruction, but also space. In the last battle at the Brilliant Shrine, if Chenrui had a destructive artifact like the Thunder Flail, then even if he could fully exert the function of the artifact, he would not be able to escape from the powerful power of Michael. Dragon Emperor Palgoris once said that the Tower of Brilliance was the rarest spatial artifact. It had 3 special abilities. The first was Space Barrier, which used the power of space as a barrier to divert and block the enemy's attack. The second was Space Travel, which broke through the restrictions of the blockade and carried out chaotic long-distance space travel. Due to his lack of strength, Chen-Rui could not exert this function. However, last time, he only used Ben Hong's pseudo-god level soul brand to drive the artifact and broke through the space blockade in front of the Brilliance Shrine and successfully escaped with the Stargate. The third was Kingdom Fusion, which fused the kingdom to form a special living space that could carry a large number of living beings and freely carry out space transfer. Not to mention that the size of this space was far greater than ordinary storage items. Just the function of carrying living beings to carry out space transfer was fundamentally different from storage items. Compared with Space Barrier, Chen-Rui needed Space Travel and Kingdom Fusion more. Space Travel could allow him to break through the space blockade like last time and use the Stargate to escape at the critical moment, while Kingdom Fusion could escape with people other than the Sealed Star. Although the Sealed Star's ability was heaven-defying, it had been proven in practice that in order to form a statue that could fuse with the body on the star-sealing platform, one had to go through a month of star-level strengthening. Not only that, the quota for the Sealed Star and the spiritual link was limited. If the other party was unwilling to establish a spiritual link, or had a contract, it would be even more impossible to achieve. The light of the Blood Fiend ring was still strong, indicating that Tiffany was fine now, but it was not easy to complete Raisin's entrustment. Chen-Rui had interacted with Eudora before. Coupled with Isabella's encounter 100 years ago, he already had a clearer concept of her holiness saintess. He didn't know if it was a blessing or a disaster for Tiffany to be by her side. One thing was certain. Tiffany's obsession with her mother was very deep. It was probably quite difficult to convince her to return to the demon realm. It was better to wait until the matter of creating the origin was over, then try to contact her for a period of time. When necessary, he could use the power of the Tower of Glory. However, the Tower of Glory wasn't something that could be used by ordinary people. It required the power of a pseudo-god to play its real role. The last time Chen-Rui activated the Tower of Glory, he relied on the soul imprint that he got from Ben Hong. This was a genuine peak pseudo-god soul imprint. At first, Ben Hong gave him 5 copies, and he distributed it to the girls in the harem. Later, at the Holy Light Mountain, in order to win him over, Ben Hong also gave him the last 5 copies. When Chen-Rui escaped in front of the Temple of Light, he used 1 copy. He used another copy to make the enhanced version of Brilliant Lightning of Light. Now, he still had 3 copies. Ben Hong's method was to teach him how to use the soul imprint to activate the true power of the Tower of Glory. After consuming a copy of the soul imprint, Chen-Rui could barely exert the Kingdom Fusion power of the Tower of Glory. After testing, he could bring Isabella and Rala through the Stargate, but the time was very limited. He could only maintain it for less than 10 minutes before he would be automatically rejected by the space. However, if he were to escape through the Stargate, 10 seconds would be enough. It was necessary to take preventive measures. Although there were no flaws in Ben Hong's guidance, Chen-Rui instinctively felt that it did not seem to be that simple, especially when this kind of soul imprint was from Ben Hong himself. He was very clear about Ben Hong's means. In this Holy Light Mountain, under the eyes of the 3 supreme angels, Raphael, Michael, and Gabriel, it was the safest. Once he left the Holy Mountain or Ben Hong completed the comprehension of the origin of creation, he would definitely fall out with them. He had to take precautions in advance. Ben Hong did not know that the Tower of Glory had actually become Chen-Rui's exclusive item, through deep analysis. It was just that Chen-Rui's current strength was not enough to exert the power of the Tower of Glory. If Ben Hong wanted to tamper with the Tower of Glory, there would be an unexpected surprise. During this time, Chen-Rui used his identity as the Holy Sun, in the name of Spiritual Imprint, and under the banner of Raphael, he made various resource requests to Pope Fendes. The main requests were the elemental magic materials that Rala needed for her training, the wind materials that Isabella needed for her training, a large number of rare light materials, and various resources needed for the upgrade of the City of Stars. Although he was quite surprised by the variety and quantity of the resources and materials, since it was the will of the Supreme Angel Raphael, Fendes did not dare to neglect it. The foundation of the Church of Light was quite amazing. In Chinrui's request list, they had almost everything except some extremely rare materials. Most of the light materials were used in the Holy Grail because the Holy Grail could accelerate the recovery effect by sacrificing the power of light. With this sacrifice, regardless of the cost, Veronica's originally broken soul began to recover bit by bit. Although there was still a long time before the complete recovery, she finally saw hope. On this day, Raphael came again. Chinrui reported his integration progress to Raphael. Raphael noticed that this originally soldier-level, higher demon, had actually entered the ranks of saint. Although he was only a pseudo-saint level, demon emperor, this speed was quite amazing. It seemed that Arthur's attempt to spiritual imprint was quite successful. Subsequently, Chinrui made a bottle of the most basic, true black potion in front of Raphael. This showed that he had now mastered some of the potion master's abilities. As long as he had time, he would definitely be able to make higher-grade black potions. Raphael had always been conceited. He never thought that he had been played by this ant with tricks. He did not suspect anything. Instead, he was quite satisfied. "Very good, your rate of improvement is still above my expectations. Tomorrow, make a trip to Blessed Peak." After leaving this sentence, Raphael's figure disappeared into thin air.